1 minute to air. We are streaming live.
Recording in progress.
Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Monday, everybody. I would like to call the Durham City Council meeting to order for this Monday, April 3rd, 2023 at 7 p.m. here in City Hall chambers. We certainly want to welcome all of you who are in attendance here. We have a sea of pink and green tonight. We have a sea of red and white tonight. We have a very full house tonight. We have people all out in the foyer area. We are so happy to see you all here tonight as we get ready to conduct the people's business here. We thank those who are joining us remotely as well. I'd like to have a moment of meditation at this time so that we may center ourselves for the evening ahead. Thank you all for that. I now ask for Councilwoman Deidreana Freeman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. It's our practice to stand and salute the flag.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll.
Mayor O'Neill,
I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton,
I'm here.
Councilmember Caballero,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Halsey-Hyman,
Present.
Councilmember Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we get started, we have to take a moment to recognize the loss that the city suffered over the last week with our budget director, Mr. John A. Lowell. I'm going to ask our city manager to give a few remarks today and on Thursday, because this is a week of mourning for us here in the city. He has worked long and hard for the city of Durham. I did not meet him until last year over Zoom. And he masterfully carried us through the budget process. And so he is already being missed, and we want to acknowledge him and his family tonight. City Manager Page.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for a moment of privilege. On behalf of the administration and all of the city of Durham, we deeply mourn the death of our trusted colleague and friend, John Allure. For nearly 25 years, John served in and excelled in several city positions in our finance department and our budget department. He most recently served as the Budget and Management Services Director, a position he had held since January of 2022. Those who knew John knew him as a dedicated and a passionate public servant and a loving father of 3 daughters. We also appreciated John's many talents and interests, as he was a celebrated author, a podcaster, and an avid biker. We are all keeping John's family in our thoughts and our prayers, and he will be greatly missed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager Page. It is at this time that we turn to our ceremonial items for tonight, and we have several we'll be celebrating. The first, we will have a proclamation to be read by Councilwoman Freeman on the Fair Housing Month proclamation. The next one is Mama Cookie Day proclamation. The third will be the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Alpha Zeta Omega Chapter Day proclamation. And then I will read the Peace Month proclamation. The AKA proclamation will be read by Councilwoman Monique Hosey Hyman, and Mama Cookie Day proclamation will be read by Councilwoman Johnson in that order.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I am presenting this proclamation to Ms. Cindy Burns, President, and Sharon Shuckle, of the Chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Like to join me? Proclamation. Whereas the Fair Housing Act, enacted on April 11, 1968, enshrined into federal law the goal of eliminating racial segregation and ending housing discrimination in the United States. And whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, national of origin, and disability, and commits recipients of federal funding to affirmatively further fair housing in their communities. And whereas Durham is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all, and whereas our social fabric, the economic health, and environment are the strengths in diverse and inclusive communities, and whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, discrimination persists and many communities remain segregated, and whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunities are repugnant to the common sense of decency and fairness. Now, therefore, I, Elaine M. O'Neill, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Fair Housing Month in Durham, and hereby urge all residents to be a community committed to fair housing and to promoting appropriate activities by private and public entities to provide and advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of Durham. Witness my hand and the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, this the third day of April 2023. Elaine M. O'Neill, Mayor. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Sharon. Cindy.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. My name is Cindy Burns. I am the president of the Durham Regional Association of Realtors, and Sharon Sunkel is our chair of the DEI committee. On behalf of our association, the realtors, and all of our members, we'd like to thank you for declaring April Fair Housing Month. Every American has the right to fair housing, the right to live where they choose, the right to raise a family, and the ability to own a home. A home presents many things. It represents family, community, but ultimately it's where the heart beats for all of us. As realtors, we completely support fair housing and are sworn to uphold a code of ethics that bounds us to a higher standard of fairness. It is our mission to have housing options available for all so that the dream of home ownership can be a reality and not just a dream. So thank you so much for inviting us here tonight. We appreciate everything you do for us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to present this proclamation for Mama Cookie Day. Is there anybody you want up here with you? Anyone else that you want up here? There's a whole crowd of folks out in the hall. Yeah, anybody who you want to come up? Thanks all so much for being here. I'm sorry we couldn't fit everybody in. It's a big night tonight at City Hall. Whereas Mama Cookie Harwell Bradley was born April 4th in Durham, North Carolina, and has been a dedicated grassroots leader for the people of our city. And whereas Mama Cookie witnessed Durham families going hungry during the pandemic and spearheaded the creation of Fed Up, a food distribution program that fed thousands of Durham residents throughout 2020 and 2021. And whereas Mama Cookie has decades of experience working in Durham as a fast food worker, a certified nursing assistant, and a home care worker. And whereas Mama Cookie has been paid poverty wages and jobs throughout the service industry and used this experience to fight to raise the minimum wage to a living wage in North Carolina and across the nation. Whereas Mama Cookie has been badly hurt on the job due to unsafe working conditions and has worked through the pandemic without being provided proper protective equipment by her employers. And she has used these experiences to organize and demand safety for all essential workers. And whereas Mama Cookie has experienced the systemic racism and lack of worker protections faced by many Black workers in the South, and has used this experience to speak out for economic justice and racial justice for all workers. And whereas Mama Cookie has spent the last 8 years helping build a worker-led organization in Durham that has spread across the South and personally helped educate thousands of workers about their rights. And whereas Mama Cookie worked for decades in the service industry without a voice on the job or the chance to join a union, and has used this experience to unite with other workers and launch the Union of Southern Service Workers in November of 2022. And whereas Mama Cookie is a founding member we got a little bit of a delay for the folks outside, sorry y'all. Whereas Mama Cookie is a founding member of the Durham Workers' Rights Commission, and whereas Mama Cookie is a symbol and a representative of Durham's low-wage service workers who are tirelessly organizing, fueled by hope and a commitment to justice. Now, therefore, I, Elaine M. O'Neill, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 3rd, 2023 as Mama Cookie Day. Wow. There's a little bit more, but I'm gonna stop there. All right, this one's for you. Here.
Wow. Wow. I know I ain't got but 3 minutes, but wow. I just want to thank my God Almighty for making this happen for me. First, I want to thank Durham. I was born and raised in this city, and I love my city. I want to thank my family. They are everything to me, especially my amazing sons, Earl and Raymond. Where you at, Raymond? They're my boys. They're my boys. Earl brought me back to the movement work when we first met, and Earl brought me back to the movement work when he took me to my first Raise Up meeting. That ain't where I started, though. He introduced me to the organization, and the rest is history. I want to thank my grandparents who raised me. They will be so proud to see me get this honor today. I owe so much of who I am to my grandparents. My granddaddy, Daddy Joe, was a powerful force in life. He was a strong union man. He was a black man living in a world that wanted to crush him and silence him. But he knew that he had power, and he knew that workers had power. He taught me that. He loved my fighting spirit, and he always had my back. Now, my grandma, Ola Mae, was an amazing woman. She raised 8 of us after our parents passed on. She worked all her life at the barbecue stand. I remember how hard she worked, even when her body was breaking down. Her legs would swell from standing at that barbecue stand all day long. The skin on her legs would split open, and she would take rags and wrap her legs and still go to work and stand and fight for us. I asked her, I said, Ma, why you kept working? She said, because I have to take care of all you children. But I'm a service worker, and I can tell you that it's the same way today. Amen. And that's why I'm organizing and building this union. So when my children and grandchildren won't have to fight like I have had to fight. And that brings me to my union, the Union of Southern Service Workers. I want to thank my union family too. They are my comrades, and we are working toward the same vision. Our vision is to transform these low-wage service jobs into good union jobs. Our vision is a Durham where workers can afford to live. Our vision is a Durham where working people, especially black and brown people, have the power to make decisions about our community. Our vision is a South where we have safe jobs, where workers can set the health and safety conditions in our jobs. To all my fellow workers, we know there's a safety crisis in the service industry. That's why we're going on strike tomorrow in Durham, Columbia, and Atlanta, Georgia. We are demanding safe jobs now. So the best way you can honor me is to come out on strike with us tomorrow. I want to thank Durham Community Land Trust for allowing me to be able to have affordable housing over on the West End. That's where I grew up at, and I'm still there. I want to thank the City Council for honoring me today. I appreciate everything that y'all do, because without y'all, there wouldn't be a Durham. Elaine, I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. Jillian Johnson. This is my rider. She has stuck by me through so many fights. My fight is not over. It hasn't started. I am still going to be standing strong. I want to thank each and every one of you for giving me this honor today. There's no words that could ever take its place. Raise up! Raise up! Raise up! Raise up! All right. Thank you. Thank you. What do we do? Raise
All right, Fred. To my childhood, everybody. Bertha, Mama Cookie, Mama Cookie, Mama Cookie. See, that's me calling you. To my childhood friend, we grew up on the West End together, right around the corner from each other. We've known each other all our lives. You know, there was a time when they say nothing good comes out of the West End. But we stand here to say what? West End proud. West End proud. I love you, my sister. We're going to give folks a moment to clear out of the chambers, everybody. And we're going to honor the big, big sisters today. That's a pretty picture. Pretty picture. Almost out. But it's a day of celebration, everybody. Right, I think we almost have the door closed. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank
Turn our
you,
attention to
thank
Dr.
you.
Rosa
Good evening to my residents of Durham. Good evening to my mayor, to our city council members. And I just want to say thank you, Mama Cookie, because you're fighting for social and economic justice, and that is right up to my heart. I would like to call Dr. Camilla Izell, our chapter president of Alpha Zeta Omega chapter, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, to come forth, please. And this is very dear to my heart. About 36 years ago, I became a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority at the age of 18 at the State University of Binghamton, New York, and where my life began of service and scholarship and just following wonderful women. So this is so much an honor for me. Proclamation. Whereas Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the oldest Greek letter organization established by African American women, college women, was founded at Howard University in 1908. And whereas the Alpha Zeta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority was chartered on April 14th, 1928 in Durham, North Carolina, and was the first Black Greek letter sorority in Durham, as well as the third chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha to be established in North Carolina. And whereas the Alpha Zeta Omega chapter's members comprise of over 400 professional college-educated women who have a heart for service, who share the diverse gifts and dynamic talents to positively impact Durham and its citizens. And whereas since 1928, the Alpha Zeta Omega chapter has continuously served the Durham community by facilitating programs that address education, economic development, health, and social justice. And whereas April 14th, 2023 will mark the 95th anniversary of Alpha Zeta Omega chapter, so be it resolved that April 14th, 2023 be proclaimed as Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Zeta Omega Chapter Day in Durham community. Now, therefore, I, Elaine O'Neill, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 14th, 2023 as Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Alpha Zeta Omega Chapter Day in Durham, and whereas we urge all residents to extend congratulations to the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated on their 95th anniversary and appreciate them for doing all their work that they have done in Durham. Witnessed by my hand in a corporate seal of the city of Durham, North Carolina, the 3rd day of April 2023. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority.
Thank you so much, Councilman Hyman. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Temp, and all other members of the Durham City Council. I am Dr. Kamala Azel, and I am the president of the Alpha Zeta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Mayor O'Neill, the members of Alpha Zeta Omega chapter thank you for this honor. We also thank you for your leadership and commend you for your dedication to and passion for serving the citizens of Durham. We are proud to work alongside you and other members of the council who desire the best for those in our community. Through the years, Alpha Zeta Omega chapter has implemented many community service programs and initiatives, and we have been fortunate to foster relationships, allowing us to partner with several organizations who share our passion for creating opportunities for a better life. Alpha Zeta Omega chapter has been serving the great city of Durham since 1928. For 95 years, we have done what we could to execute our mission, which is to improve the quality of life for those in our community. This is our community. We are proud of this community, and we will do what needs to be done to ensure that those living in Durham have an opportunity to thrive and succeed. Service is in our hearts, whether we are in pink and green or not. As there is currently a heightened and intentional focus on middle and high school students in Durham and their safety, survival, and advancement, please know that Alpha Zeta Omega chapter remains committed to focusing on our programs that were created for these students. Our Youth Leadership Institute for ages 11 through 13 meets regularly at the Durham County Main Library. Also, our Debutante Ball Cotillion, which is the culmination of an educational, social, cultural, and life empowerment program for high school girls, is this Saturday at the Durham Convention Center. Our Pink Pearl Gala, Scholarship Gala, is April 29th, also at the Durham Convention Center. Both of those events have a focus on providing high school students an opportunity to earn higher education scholarship dollars. We have sponsored our annual scholarship program for high school students since 1944. Our scholarship application is currently live and on the website, and we encourage all Durham High School seniors to apply. And so again, Mayor O'Neill, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and Alpha Zeta Omega chapter thanks you for this awesome recognition. We will continue working with you for a bigger and better city of Durham. Thank you.
I am going to take a point of privilege and ask all of my sorority sisters, because this is my chapter, please come up so we can take a picture real quick. Don't worry about her.
Make it in kind of on the side.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming tonight. We have more people coming in, so we're going to take about 45 more seconds. Lots of people, how y'all doing? This is most people I've seen. We still have people coming into chambers, everybody. Give us a couple of more minutes to get folks seated. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We have a full night. This is our last proclamation for this evening. And as you know, once a month, I have been trying to gather our thoughts about a particular attribute. And so this particular attribute came to me a couple of weeks ago by an AKA, Ms. Danielle Nolan. And she asked me, and this had to be about 2 to 3 weeks ago, to think about Peace Month. And I think that was so appropriate. And so I'd like to share with you this proclamation. Whereas our daily lives are filled with news regarding inequity, discrimination, violence, and death, often causing feelings of sadness, uncertainty, fear, and whereas by recognizing the importance of respect, being patient with one another, extending grace, and the need to bring harmony to Durham, all members of our community will be made aware of the need for peace in our city. Whereas the purpose of Peace Month is to remember that violence and retaliation in any form are never the answer. Whereas we all experience hardships, and how we respond is what dictates our character. And whereas when we remain relentless in our optimism, we can better recognize growth and conceptualize the gap and opportunities for the advancement of all people. And whereas we should make peace our priority when making decisions, we should be mindful of how our actions affect others during our day-to-day activities, and be aware that everyone deserves life, happiness, and peace. And whereas by coming together as a community, we are striving for greatness and creating opportunities that enable Durham to be a welcoming, inclusive, kind, safer, and more secure place to live, work, and play. And whereas the city of Durham honors those who positively impact our community and world by promoting peace. Now therefore, I, Elaine M. O'Neill, Mayor of the city of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Peace Month in Durham, and hereby urge all residents to work on mindfulness, self-control, and remain optimistic while always spreading kindness and respect, generosity, and consideration of others. Witness my hand and the corporate seal of the city of Durham, this the third day of April 2023. I, as your mayor, hereby declare peace over this chamber. I hereby declare and decree peace over this city hall. I hereby decree and declare peace over this council. And I hereby declare and decree peace over our employees. And I hereby decree and declare peace over all the city of Durham. We will now begin the people's business, and I'll start with our announcements tonight, and I will look to my left first to see if their attorney, Dr. Hosey Hyman.
Again, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, residents, for coming out tonight. To my colleagues, I just wanted to say that I had the honor this weekend to be invited to the First Lady Tea at North Carolina Central University, which is a tea that is sponsored by the First Lady, Ms. Juanita Akeley, who also had a scholarship fundraising for the NCC Ladies Soaring for Eagle Promise. And that was really dear to my heart because it's all about mentorship. And a lot of these young women are first-generation college students like myself, and without these scholarships, they would not be able to attend NCCU. And so I want to thank her for inviting us. The mayor was also there to bring greetings. And again, she also thanked us for acknowledging the program when we did our mentorship honoring for January 2023. So I want to say thank you to the First Lady of NCCU. Also, this is Child Abuse Prevention Month, 2023. I invite you to recognize that the month of April is to nurture positive childhood experiences, and it starts with us, and it starts with education and partnership. I also want to just take a point of privilege to just say a little story. About 2 weeks ago, a man walked into City Hall and asked for help. And the front desk person at City Hall said, "I'm going to refer you to one of our city council members." And that man was a single father with 3 young ladies, 3 little girls, getting ready to be evicted. And he called me, and I immediately started to work on trying to get different people in the community to work together to try to get him a voucher that he has been trying to get for months. And pulled in all the level of collaborations that I have from being a social worker, from being in the community. And he called me on Friday. And he said, Dr. Hyman, after months, I was able to get the voucher, and now myself and my 3 little girls will not be homeless. And so while I know this is just one family, but it's 4 people who are not homeless because we took the time, and the front desk person took the time to get that person to me. So when I put my name in the hat to be a city council member, it was about service. It was not about a title. It was not about power. It was about service. And so I'm going to leave this with people, passion, collaboration, and service for all people of Durham, which is in my heart. Thank you.
Any further announcements on my left? Looking to my right now. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Your Honor. Good evening to friends and neighbors in the chamber and all who may be watching wherever you are. been a tough couple of weeks for us. I know, Madam Mayor, I want to thank you for acknowledging the life and light of John Allure and what he meant to all of us. Of course, we've had some very continue to have very significant gun violence issues as well. And some other things have gone on. It's been a tough couple of weeks for our city and for our council. Firstly, want to say, Madam Mayor, I want to thank you. The mayor a few months ago was really excited about this initiative she had seen in Wilmington, North Carolina, called the Harrelson Center. And she came back and said, you got to see it. It's great. And she seemed really excited about it. But on Friday, I had opportunity to join Her Honor in Wilmington to see it for myself. And I have to say, she was right that I had to see it for myself. I want to thank the folk down there who we experienced in Wilmington, showing us essentially this shopping center for social service interests. I do not know what integration into our own city would look like or what appropriation of it would look like, but it was something definitely worth seeing, and had a fantastic time touring it with the mayor and others on this past Friday, so I want to thank the mayor. I also spent some time in Washington, D.C. at the National League of Cities, Congressional Cities Conference, and had opportunity to sit on a panel there to get to brag about Durham and the work we've done. There was an initiative that NLC gave us a grant to participate in called Cities Assessing Fines and Fees Equitably. And Durham led in that in terms of the work we did around water equity and water bills. So I was honored to be able to sit on that panel. But I did something else. Whenever I'm in Washington, I have a tradition to sneak away and go to the memorials. Before the King Memorial was built, didn't go to it. After the King Memorial was built, I'd go by there and read the words on the walls, particularly the one that talks about out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope being crafted. But I would always go to the Lincoln Memorial, and I would look at the Gettysburg Address, and I would look at the second inaugural, and I would read it out loud. Because when I was coming up, part of my therapy in dealing with a speech impediment was to get passages of things that move me and to read them out loud and to practice them out loud. So whenever I'm in D.C., I do that. I've been reading the second inaugural address for many, many years, but I thought about my city on this particular trip. President Lincoln was no paragon of morality for his whole life. He was not born enlightened on slavery. He migrated and he evolved. In his first inaugural address, slavery was not the big sin that it was in the second inaugural address. He certainly evolved. But at the end of the second inaugural address, the president said these words, which of course live in immortality. He said, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work that we are in, to bind up the wounds of the nation. And it said nation, but I thought city when I read it. He wasn't talking about a city, he was talking about the nation. And at the time the president delivered it, it was pretty clear that the Union was going to win the war militarily. But the president did not take time to gloat. It was not about personal victory. He knew that there was something larger than himself and larger than the war. It was about the nation. It was about the city. It was about finishing the work to bind up the wounds. We've had some wounds. And today, and I'm so grateful, Madam Mayor, that you read the peace. I didn't know you were going to read the peace resolution today, that this would be a month of peace. And I want to say after reading that, that I accept that challenge. So I want to say to Her Honor Mayor O'Neill, to the Honorable Monique Halsey Hyman, to the Honorable Jillian Johnson, to the Honorable Leonardo Williams, to the Honorable Javiera Caballero, and to the Honorable Deidreana Freeman. Let us get back to work. Let us move forward to bind up the wounds of our city and get to work. And as we do it, my commitment to you, and I hope our commitment to each other, is we will do it with malice toward none and with charity for all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other announcements? All right. Well, I have a couple this evening, so it's going to take me a second to read through one. I want to address the process by which the allegations have come to us concerning one of our council colleagues. And one of the letters that I will read into the record is actually one of two that you may find of interest. The first one came from Attorney Kim Rayberg, our attorney here. She initially wrote to the city council a letter. I will not read that letter. I think that one has already been made public. But I will read a response from the Institute of Government, who I contacted. Attorney Rayberg had also contacted them, and then because I've had a long-standing relationship with them through my public career, I contacted them as well to ask them to provide some directions with what we were facing. And I asked Professor Robert Joyce, Professor Lovelady, and Professor McLaughlin, who responded to two questions that I had. I thank you, and this is my questions to them. Good afternoon, professors. I thank you for talking with me today and looking over the letter from Attorney Rayberg, and I have two questions. Number one, what are the options for council to consider for next steps? And number two, what are the parameters for communication with the public in an open meeting or otherwise? I shared these letters with our council, and I would like to read this one into the record. And this came from Professor Robert Joyce at the School of Government at UNC. Mayor O'Neill, I'm sorry that the city is facing what is potentially a difficult situation. I hope everything works out in the best interest of everyone. Here are your questions and my best answers. What are the options for council to consider for next steps? I've just now seen Kim Rayberg's email to you of just a few minutes ago that lays out the options as discussed today in a telephone meeting that included Kim Bach-Hagelman, a lawyer in private practice who is an instructor at the School of Government, Adam Lovelady, a faculty member at the school, Chris McLaughlin, also a faculty member, and me. I agree with Kim's assessment of the options, and I repeat them here. Number one, the council could decide that no action is called for at this time. Number two, the council could decide that since the allegations involve possible criminal conduct, the matter should be referred to law enforcement with no further council action. Number three, the council could discuss the matter in open session and vote to censure the council member involved. A vote of censure carries no legal consequences. Number four, the council could decide that in order to be in the best position to protect the interests of the city, an investigation should be undertaken. Because the result of such an investigation could conceivably lead to consideration of removing the council member involved from the board, great care should be taken to preserve the due process rights of everyone involved. That might best be done through the engagement of a lawyer from somewhere other than Durham to conduct the investigation on behalf of the board. A lawyer experienced in such investigations would be able to work with the council to set the structure and procedures of the investigation. Question two, what are the parameters for communication with the public in an open meeting or otherwise? It seems to me that two considerations are at work at the same time. First, the council has an interest in the transparency of open government and in keeping the public informed of the work of the council. Second, because of the nature of the conduct asserted to have occurred, especially its possible criminal nature, the unwarranted or premature release of information could work to the disadvantage of the council member involved and the city. Given the interaction of these two considerations, I think that council members should limit public comments in open meetings or outside of meetings to the greatest extent possible, consistent with reasonable transparency. Discretion is called for. I don't believe I can be more specific than that. Public service, alas, does not always follow a smooth path. I hope these thoughts are helpful. Bob Joyce. That would conclude the reading of his memo in the record. I'll now turn to my brief comments. With regards to the allegations made concerning one of our council colleagues, which allegations were given to us by our city attorney, that matter has been referred to the appropriate authorities. Those authorities will investigate those allegations. During the period of and until the conclusion of that investigation, I would ask all of Durham residents to stay focused on the issues that face us. Likewise, I would request anyone who is contacted by those authorities to please act truthfully in accordance with any questions that you may be asked. We, as a council, are tasked with seeking and enacting policies that enhance the growth and safety of all of our residents. This is a heavy lift when we think about the challenges that we all face: crime, affordable housing, and the rapid growth of our city, to name a few. Durham has been faced with daunting challenges before, and we as a community are well able and equipped to meet those that stand in front of us. But we must remain focused and diligent to make sure that Durham is a community that is truly a safe place to live, work, and play. As your mayor, I am committed to this cause, and I ask that we allow law enforcement to do its job while we continue to stay focused and move our city forward. We can do this because we are Bull City Strong. We are Bull City Strong. I will be making no further public comments on this issue while it is under investigation, and I would ask all to do the same. My second announcement would be that our staff would like to receive 2 proclamations on Thursday, April 6th. And if you all would just give me a thumbs up on this, it will be the proclamation, first proclamation will be the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, and the second will be the National Community Development Week proclamation. Any objections to those being heard on Thursday? That's kind of unusual. Thumbs up. All right, that's unanimous. Thank you, staff. Got it done. The third announcement I have, on last week, I sent a letter to about 40 people who signed up to speak to us on the Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment, Simplifying Codes for Affordable Housing Development, SCAD. We had a great interest in this, and I asked them to make sure that we do due diligence in looking at what is coming before the City Council in May. We have a unique opportunity to really learn some things and to be very innovative in this space in terms on how we communicate across the aisle. So I sent the letter to both the proponents and the opponents and asked if they would meet while we are waiting for our city staff to help us to begin to understand what will be coming before us. During that interim, if they would be willing to meet across the aisle. I've had 2 persons who have desired to do that. The first would be Mr. James Chavis, Mr. James Chavis has offered to host this at Holton, and Mr. Tom Miller, Mr. Chavis is here, also had called me today, left an email with my office to call me today and would like to speak about it as well. I would urge us, I know this is not a courtroom, but there are some things that are good about a courtroom. And in a courtroom, you can actually have a discourse about the very worst of life and life situations, and it be done in a calm manner where you have to explain what is going on in terms of the law and in terms of facts in a case to a jury of ordinary citizens who can understand. There is no reason why we cannot make this where we have a dialogue that is both informative and without any animosity or any discord. It happens every day in courtrooms all across America. So I would urge you all, if you did sign up, if you have any interest in that, that you would model that for us so that when you come back, we can have a really good discussion about this amendment, this very important, maybe life-changing amendment for years to come. So please, let's do this right. Let us take the time to dig deep, understand where the opposition is coming from or where the proponents are coming from so that we can be ready to move forward in a transparent manner that is easily understood for all who would be involved. And that would conclude my announcements for tonight, everybody. That was a long time, wasn't it? I will now recognize our city manager for any priority items she may have.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the Durham City Council. I have one priority item for you this evening, and it is agenda item number 4, which is fiscal year 2023-24 budget development guidelines. Page 3 of attachment 2 was modified from City Council budget requests will be considered to funding for City Council budget requests advanced during the special budget work session on March 23rd, 2023 will be considered. Thank you. That is all I have.
Thank you, City Manager Page. I now turn to City Attorney Rayburg for any priority items she may have.
Good evening, Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and members of the City Council. The Durham City Attorney's Office has no priority items this evening.
Thank you, Attorney Rayburg. I now turn to our City Clerk, Clerk Schreiber.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City Clerk's Office has no priority items this evening.
Thank you so much. The next order of business is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of items that the council has previously considered in a work session. All items on the consent agenda may be approved by a single vote of the council. Items may be removed from the council agenda by a council member or a member of the public, and those items will be considered separately at the end of the meeting tonight. I will proceed to read the title of each of our entire agenda, as a matter of fact. Item number 1, Durham City County Appearance Commission appointments. Item 2, February 2023 bid report. Item 3, Industrial Pretreatment Program Performance Audit, February 2023. Item 4, the fiscal year 2023-24 Budget Development Guidelines. Item 5, the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA Project, Culture and Arts, Invest to Restart. Item 6, the City of Durham and Keep Durham Beautiful, Inc., Cultural Roadmap, Development of Grant Budget Ordinance. Item 7, Human Relations Commission 2022 Annual Report. Item 8, Housing Appeals Board Annual Report for fiscal year 2022. Item 9, the resolution and agreement for donation of surplus personal property to Built to Last Innovations Lab, Inc. Item 10, 2023 National Police Athletic Leagues Mentoring Grant Project Ordinance. Item 11, Contract Amendment Number 1, ST-286 Petition Streets 2021. Number 12, the Interlocal Agreement with Durham County Soil and Water Conservation District for Water Quality Improvement Measures. Number 13, The Second Amendment to contract with Powerhouse Recycling, Inc. for recycling services for electronic equipment. Item 19, the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA project. I can never say this word except from Rwanda. Entrepreneur. Something about my tongue won't do it. Accelerator plus youth science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. Our general business agenda, public hearings. Item 15, the consolidated annexation 901-903 Sharon Road. Item 16, consolidated annexation 1300 Oxford. Number 17, the consolidated annexation 2142 East Gear. Item 18 is the zoning map change 2201 West Cornwallis. We have no pulled items. All right, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. So moved. It's been moved by Councilman Williams, seconded by Councilwoman Freeman. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. If you would please close the vote and report out.
The motion passes 7-0.
Thank you so much. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is approved unanimously. Now, we have about 25 people online tonight, and we also have probably, it looks like, about the same amount of people who would like to speak to various items. Because of that, and we're going to try, as you know, we try to balance time on each item for each speaker, but I want you to please be mindful that tonight I may change it from 3 minutes to 2 because of the bulk of people, if you're on one of those long items, so that we can make sure that we can hear from everyone that wants to be heard tonight. And so now we will turn to our public hearings. And our first public hearing is the item number 15, the consolidated annexation 901 and 903 Sharon Road.
Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and honorable council members, good evening. I'm Brooke Roper with the Planning Department, and I'm happy to be here with you tonight. Before I begin, staff would like to state for the record that all Planning Department hearing items have been advertised and noticed in accordance with state and local law, and affidavits of all notices are on file in the Planning Department. A request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and initial zoning map change has been received from Keith Strong of Strong Rock Engineering for 2 parcels of land totaling 17.78 acres and located at 901 and 903 Sharon Road. This annexation petition is for a contiguous expansion of the primary corporate limits. The applicant intends to develop 63 units consisting of 34 townhomes and 29 single-family residences. The current zoning is residential rural and residential suburban 20, Falls Jordan District B. For the initial city zoning of this site, if annexation is approved, the applicant proposes to change this designation to residential suburban 10, Falls Jordan District B. The proposal is a general rezoning with no text or graphic development plan. This request received a recommendation of denial from Planning Commission on December 13th, 2022 by a vote of 11-1. The properties are currently designated low-medium density residential on the future land use map. The proposed residential suburban 10 zoning is consistent with the designated future land use. If the proposed zoning is approved, there will be no change to the future land use map designation of low-medium density residential. As a reminder, 3 motions are required for this application. The first is to adopt an ordinance annexing the property and entering into a utility extension agreement. The second is to approve the zoning ordinance, and the third is to approve the consistency statement. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Roper. You have heard the report from staff, and I'm now going to declare this public hearing open. First, are there any questions for staff from members of the council? All right, there seems to be none. We will turn now to our speakers who have signed up to speak to us tonight. And I believe that we have Ms. Tina Motley Pearson online, along with Ms. Mary Steege, I believe, as well. No, Ms. Mary Steege. Ms. Motley Pearson, if you are there.
Actually, I'm here.
Oh, great.
Hi. So I was going to speak on number 15. So I don't know if it's supposed to be number 15 for the Sharon Rhodes annexation.
All right, I'm sorry. He goes first. Attorney Baker, how much time do you think you'll need?
Very brief, because we're just here to ask for a continuance, Madam.
You want to start off with 10 minutes?
No, we just need to ask for a continuance, Madam Mayor.
You're asking for a continuance.
If I may just introduce myself. Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, my name is Patrick Biker. I'm with Morningstar Law Group. We are here tonight representing Dries Homes, and we respectfully are asking for a continuance to your May 15 City Council meeting. We would like to add a text-only development plan to this proposal before the council tonight so we can add text commitments in order to make this a stronger application for the community. And we were recently hired to work on this proposal and have not had time to move forward with that. We've talked to the planning department and understand that the May 15 agenda would work for the planning staff. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but respectfully ask for a continuance to Monday, May 15, 2023.
What is the pleasure of the council? Any questions? Any objections? Any thumbs up? No thumbs up? All right, your motion to continue is hereby granted. We'll see you in May 15th. For all those who have signed up to speak on this matter, May 15th. May 15th. We now turn to item, yes, Mr. Chavis.
I was going to add something before that. Can I do that so I can be excused? That's the one I want to speak on. But I was going to add something to that, dealing to the part that you talked about.
Let me ask one of the council persons to step to the side to see what it is he's asking about, because I can't.
That's about the meeting that I called you about Holton, having the meeting at Holton. I was going to add that in with 15.
On number 15, you want to talk about the...
Talk about that part. I'm not going to talk about the other part.
You mean the meeting, you would like to make an announcement about the meeting at Holton?
Yeah, because I was going to use that within that part.
Okay. If you could give that information about the meeting to our clerk, I will announce it for you. Okay? If you would give her that information. Thank you. All those who've signed up, if you remember to come back on May 15th. We now turn to item 16, which is the Consolidated Annexation 1300 Old Oxford.
Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and honorable council members, good evening. Brooke Roper with the Planning Department. Happy to be here with you tonight. A request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and initial zoning map change has been received from Katie Hamilton of Gander Development for one parcel of land totaling 6.25 acres and located at 1300 Old Oxford Road. This annexation petition is for a contiguous expansion of the primary corporate limits to allow for the development of 2 to 3 commercial, office, and storage buildings currently allowed within the Unified Development Ordinance. The properties are currently designated industrial on the future land use map. The proposed industrial light zoning is consistent with the designated use shown on the FLUM, the future land use map. If the proposed zoning is approved, there will be no change to the future land use map designation of industrial. As part of this annexation petition, the applicant is not seeking a change in the underlying zoning district. A direct translational zoning is one in which the existing county zoning is translated to identical city zoning district upon the annexation of the property into city limits. A translational zoning does not include a development plan, and any future development may proceed according to what the zoning would allow. While the current use of the property is an abandoned manufacturing facility and recreational courts, future development under the existing zoning of industrial light allows for agricultural activities, a variety of public and civic uses such as schools, places of worship, and medical facilities, commercial uses such as restaurants, retail, and indoor recreation, office space, and light industrial facilities. As a reminder, 3 motions are required for this application. The first is to adopt an ordinance annexing the property and entering into a utility extension agreement. The second is to approve the zoning ordinance, and the third is to approve the consistency statement. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available for questions.
Thank you again, Ms. Roper. You have heard the report from staff, and I'm now going to declare this public hearing open. First, are there any questions for staff from members of the council? All right, we will now turn to our applicant. I have to remember this process again, it's been a moment. And ask you to state your name and how long you think you'll need to begin with.
I think I'll need about 3 minutes to go through our presentation, and then I do have a presentation.
And would you state your name?
Yeah, sure. My name is Katie Hamilton, and I'm here on behalf of Gander Development. We're located at 2310 South Miami Boulevard, Suite 235.
All right, we'll start you off. You said you have a presentation as well as some comments.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we'll start you off with 10 minutes. Okay, we'll start there and work backwards.
All right. Well, Madam Mayor and City Council, thank you for taking the time to consider our proposed annexation of 1300 Old Oxford Road. And I'd like to thank staff for their thorough report. Staff has done a pretty good job of going through this proposal from a regulatory perspective. I'd just like to take a quick trip through the background of this project. This site is northeast of the Bragtown community and in the northwestern portion of the Oxford-Hamlin community. We're in the northeast quadrant of Old Oxford Road and Hamlin Road. And this property we purchased in August of last year. When we purchased this property, we learned that we are pretty much surrounded by recognized environmental conditions, including a groundwater contamination issue to our east on the former Mitsubishi site. Following this understanding, we spoke with our environmental consultant and learned that installing a well to get water was not feasible because of that groundwater contamination. We could pull that plume of groundwater contamination towards our site and our well. Following that conversation, we spoke with city staff to learn what our options were for getting clean drinking water. Because we're not a residential property, we're a non-residential property, our only option is to annex into the city to connect to city water. So we started our annexation process. And during this process, we have had 3 formal meetings with the Oxford-Hamlin Community Coalition, the Bragtown community, and then multiple conversations that were informal with their leadership through Zoom, Teams meetings, phone calls, and emails. As a result of these meetings, we've included a text commitment in our site plan because we realize we don't have the zoning process to recognize the neighbors' concerns. So one of the text commitments that we added to our site plan was to notify the neighbors via email, through their community email, about any rock blasting that would occur on site. We've also agreed to marketing the southern portion of the site to local retailers. We do intend to use the southern portion of the site for a retail use because we recognize that our site is a transitional site between the larger industrial properties to our north and east and this established communities to our south. To go into the, I don't know if my presentation's not seen, but to go into the context, we do have a lucky enough position of having water on all 3 sides of our site, including the future Greenway to our east, Old Oxford to our west, and Hamlin to our south. We also are completely surrounded by sewer. Unfortunately, we can only connect to one of those sewer lines, which is in Old Oxford Road, right in front of that Cardinal storage that's to our west. So we're going to need to extend that just shortly to bring it to our side of the road. So with that, we understand that the infrastructure needed to be installed for this site is minimal, and that this annexation will be a net positive for the city. Again, we appreciate your consideration of our proposed annexation, and I'm here and available for questions or any concerns you'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would ask if my colleagues have any questions. Right before I turn to our speakers.
Is there a way we could get a copy of that presentation? I didn't have it.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to send it. Sorry, it was pulled up on this screen, but I don't know how to make it share to the other screens. But yeah.
Just shoot an email.
Okay.
We'll try to see as we're taking out our speakers, we will try to see if we can have that done while hopefully they're working on it right now. Okay, so hopefully we'll get that done. We have several folks here in the audience to speak to us tonight. You will be given 3 minutes apiece. The first is Ms. Helena Craig. She's here. The second will be Ms. Natalie Pickett. And the third will be Katie Hamilton. I do not think we have any online speakers. I'll just check with our clerk. All right. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members and Mayor O'Neill. I'm Natalie Pickett. I live at 1111 Paul Road in Durham, a very short distance from this property. I'm here representing Oxford Hamlet Community Coalition as well. Since this is not a rezoning case, we have had fewer advocacy tools at our disposal than normal. That's just part of the process, specifically not having that leverage via text commitments and design plans, design commitments, those other elements of development plans, right? So at this time, since there's no development plan required, since it's not a rezoning case, we do not feel like we have enough firm information about the developer's plans to be strong proponents or strong opponents. However, we chose to speak tonight as proponents since there isn't kind of a neutral position available, but wanted to also express our engagement on this project, as mentioned by the developer, and our community perspective. So please know that we are very much still in the middle of our advocacy efforts to ensure that the eventual development helps and does not harm the Oxford Hamlet community members. In the absence of that type of leverage in the annexation process, we have worked to build rapport with the developer and are advocating our concerns and ideas directly with them. So far, we feel like they have been very open to neighbor input and feedback, but we will continue to be diligent in the hopes that their site plans continue to reflect our ongoing engagement with them. As an example of this, we do recognize and appreciate the site plan text commitment to notify Oxford Hamlet Community Coalition ahead of any blasting so that we can make sure all of our neighbors are aware of it, not just those within the very small required notification area. As we have said before from this podium, we know that development is coming to the Oxford Hamlin community, but we will continue to insist that existing Oxford Hamlin residents be engaged with collaboratively by developers like in this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. Helena Craig at 1017 Old Oxford Road. Good to see you all. Really, in the interest of keeping it short, I just wanted to give some credit to this developer for going above and beyond in terms of actually making things that there's really not even a process to give us a proffer, but just as a good faith effort to notify neighbors of blasting, given that we still want to raise a concern. We have several neighbors that are impacted by wells and septic that could be damaged by the blasting. So the good faith effort to them to reach out to us as an organization to notify our neighbors should be appreciated and should be extended by other developers, honestly. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us this evening. Just wanted to make sure there was a Miss Mary Steege that was listed, but we don't see her on the internet at this point in time. Just want to make sure that that is correct.
That is correct.
All right, thank you. And we have completed our 3 speakers. All right, I will ask if you would like to speak in rebuttal at this time. If you have any other things that you would like to say, and we'll see if at the same time, we'll see if your presentation is available.
Okay. No, I appreciate the Oxford Hamlin community coming out, and I am in the process of emailing you the presentation now. It's pretty short. I just, showed the words from the VOCs that were next door that I don't know how to pronounce because I'm a landscape architect by trade and don't really know how to say those 5-letter words or 5-syllable words.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will now declare this public hearing to be closed, and the matter is now back before council.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to thank both the developer and the neighborhood for working together. I appreciated the emails I received from everyone, and it was clear that there was a lot of collaboration. So it always makes our job easier when that happens, even when, as was clearly stated, this was not a requirement. So appreciate both the neighbor advocacy and then also the developer for being really intentional.
Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you. Similarly, I was going to co-sign Councilmember Caballero's comments and just say that I think that it's very much appreciated for a developer to actually take into account that there's no on-ramp for the residents in the community. And I want to figure out if there is a way to make sure that that does happen because it is very vital to the process moving forward peacefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Williams, did you have something?
Just real quick, the residents, how close are you all to the county line? Or not even residents, how close is this project rather to the county line?
So it kind of wiggles around us.
Okay.
So to our west directly is the county line, but then the Welcome Group property is actually to our east, and that's been annexed. So it comes up East Carver Street, and the property to our west is inside the city limits, but then like when you watch it, it actually is coming up East Carver Street with nothing on either side for a little while being annexed. Then our property to our west is annexed, and then my understanding is the Welcome Group's Welcome Venture Park I believe it got annexed. I know it got zoned, so I'm assuming they annexed with it to our east. So it's
Okay, thank you.
Goes around
The reason why I ask is just around, I heard one of the residents mention some of the residents are on wells. And I just, when it comes to blasting, we're having those concerns in Southeast Durham, and I'll be visiting out there to just look at the proximity, and I thank you guys for working together. I'll be doing the same over there.
Yeah, so yeah, we do have a text commitment for that. And then, the well issue is one we completely understand, being as that's the entire reason we're here before you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilman Williams, and thank you. All right, colleagues, there are 3 motions that we need to entertain this evening regarding 1300 Old Oxford. The first motion, number 1, everything around? Okay, is to adopt an ordinance annexing 1300 Old Oxford into the city of Durham effective June 30th, 2023, and to authorize the city manager to enter into a utility extension agreement with Gander Development LLC.
Moved as read.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilwoman Caballero, I believe, or Councilwoman Freeman. All right, all those, we have our clickers, so Madam Clerk, if you would open the vote. If you would please close the vote and report out.
The motion's passed 7-0.
The second motion for our consideration is to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance by taking property out of the Industrial Light IL Falls/Jordan District B F/J-B county jurisdiction and establishing the same as Industrial Light IL Falls/Jordan, District B, F/J-B, city jurisdiction.
Moved as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilman Williams. Madam Clerk, if you will open the vote. If you will close the vote. Without.
And the motion passes 7-0.
The last motion for our consideration on this item is motion number 3 to adopt a consistency statement as required by NCGS 160D-605.
Move to adopt consistency.
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilwoman Freeman. If you will please open the vote. If you will please close the vote and report out.
The third motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We now turn our attention to item number 17, which is also a public hearing, and we will hear from Ms. Rober.
Mayor Neal, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and honorable council members, good evening. Brooke Roper with the Planning Department. A request for a utility extension agreement, voluntary annexation, and initial zoning map change has been received from Srinivas Rao Guram for one parcel of land totaling 8.29 acres and located at 2142 East Gear Street. This annexation petition is for contiguous expansion of the primary corporate limits. The intent of the annexation is for the development of a convenience store with a gas station. The properties are currently designated commercial and low-density residential on the future land use map. The proposed commercial neighborhood and residential rural zoning is consistent with the designated use shown on the future land use map. If the proposed zoning is approved, there will be no change to the future land use map designation of commercial and low-density residential. As part of this annexation petition, the applicant is not seeking a change in the underlying zoning district. A direct translational zoning is one in which the existing county zoning is translated to the identical city zoning district upon the annexation of the property into the city limits. A translational zoning does not include a development plan, and any future development may proceed according to what the zoning would allow. While the current use of the property is a vacant commercial residence, future development under the existing zoning of commercial neighborhood and residential rural allows for retail sales and services and public and civic uses. As a reminder, 3 motions are required for this application. The first is to adopt an ordinance annexing the property and entering into a utility extension agreement. The second is to approve the zoning ordinance, and the third is to approve the consistency statement. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Roper. You have heard the report from staff, and I'm now going to declare this public hearing open. First, are there any questions for staff from members of the council? Seeing none, we will now go to our applicant, and we have one proponent to speak as well, Mr. Tim Severs and Mr. Mike Andrews. Mr. Severs, how much time do you need tonight, sir?
Just 2 to 3 minutes, Mayor.
All right, we'll start you with 5, okay?
Good evening, Mayor Neal, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, council members. My name is Tim Sivers with Cunity, previously known as Horvath Associates. With me this evening is Courtney McQueen, also with Cunity, as well as the owner and developer. Thank you, staff, for that project presentation. Before you this evening is the annexation request for 3.68 acres that is adjacent to recently approved annexations. Our site plan's been in the review process for a few months now. Includes both on-site and off-site improvements. Those on-site improvements include approximately a 3,000 square foot convenience store with fuel sales. In addition, an area for a second use, like a small restaurant, is provided for and accounted for with our stormwater control measure. Tree coverage is provided at the back of the site. The existing cell tower is not being modified, as well as the existing pond on site is not being modified. The off-site road improvements include a 10-foot shared multi-use path, a northbound left turn lane on Gear Street at the intersection with East Club, as well as multiple sidewalk connections. The access point on East Gear contains a concrete median, which will restrict access to a right-in, right-out access only to provide better traffic movement. This convenience store will be within walking distance of the recently approved apartment units directly to the south, as well as the residential development to the east that's currently under construction. Tonight, I ask you to vote in favor of this project to allow the use of this commercial zone with the annexation. The landowner and developer, as well as my team, is here for any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have two additional cards. One, Mr. Mike Andrews, who is speaking as a proponent, and Mr. Guram, G-U-R-R-A-M. Are you a proponent as well, sir? Thank you. I do not have any other cards or any additional speakers. Would that be correct online?
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Andrews, you have 3 minutes, followed by Mr. Gorham, who would have 3 minutes as well.
Good evening, Mayor O'Neill and Mayor Pro Tem Middleton and City Council. Before I make any comments, I do want to stand here and express my condolences to you and the family of Mr. Allor and to the other city employees that work with him daily. I greatly understand that loss. And I also want to congratulate all those that were recognized tonight in the ceremonial items before the meeting started. I'm here as a proponent for Mr. Gorham, the applicant. I've known him for over 25 years. He's a hardworking individual. In the area that he is expressing to have this construction, there is no walkable currently area for residents to come and provide services for candy, soda, popcorn, gasoline, and all the development that has gone on in that area. I think it would be a great benefit for that intersection. And for the future development, what I understand is the proposed school, I think that would be directly across from this intersection. So I greatly would appreciate your consideration for this applicant. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much. We now turn to Mr. Gorham. If you would like to speak, sir, you have 3 minutes. And I do believe we have Ms. Andrews having her hand raised. If she wants to speak to this issue, she will be next as the proponent or opponent, I believe. Thank you. You may proceed, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Srinivas Guram, and I'm here with my family today. And I'm a small business owner and run 2 convenience stores with gas in Durham, where we have been doing business over 20 years. My wife and I immigrated to the US from India in 1998 with a passion to run our own business. Our kids were born and raised here in Durham, and we are proud to be part of this community for so long. Our business has impacted not only our lives, but our employees and customers. We try to make our community a better place through our business. We want to expand our business and are planning to build a convenience store with gas in 2142 East Gear Street. We will continue to create employment within the Durham community through this project. With this annexation approval, we will be able to achieve this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I believe that would conclude our in-person speakers, but we did see a hand raised to see if Ms. Andrews wanted to speak on this matter. Ms. Pam Andrews?
Yes, ma'am. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Ma'am, are you speaking as a proponent or an opponent?
I am a proponent tonight.
Oh.
I know that's hard to believe, but I am.
All right,
I just
ma'am.
wanted to call in tonight. I've been at a service for my pastor that married me and Mike and built my home, and I couldn't not show up for his service tonight. So, but I had promised Sam and Cherie I would be there tonight for them as well. And I just wanted to call in and say what amazing community people they have been for the Oak Grove community. They opened not one store, but then a second store. And the people in that community look at them not just as a gas station, but as friends. And many people go there and treat them as family. They have been a part of our lives for about 25 years. We've watched their family grow up. But I want to say tonight that with all the development in that area where I grew up off Junction Road, there is definitely a need to have extra supplies available. You got a school across the street, apartments, and everybody needs a last minute run in, grab a banana, grab an apple, and Sam and Cherie try to provide healthy snacks as well as just the typical junk food. So again, I ask you to support this family tonight. They are a very humble family and are very positive for our community. I thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much. I believe that would conclude all of our speakers tonight on this action, on this matter. And I will now declare the public hearing to be closed and the matter is back before council. Colleagues, we have 3 motions that we need to consider for this matter. Motion number 1 will be to adopt an ordinance annexing 2142 East Gear Street into the city of Durham, effective June 30th, 2023, and to authorize the city manager to enter into a utility extension agreement with Akai AKI Investment Group LLC.
Moved as read.
Moved.
All right. That has been moved by Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilwoman Jose Hammond. If you would open the vote, Madam Clerk. If you would close the vote and report out, please.
The first motion passes 7-0.
We now turn our attention to motion number 2, which is to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance by taking property out of the commercial neighborhood CN and residential rural RR Falls/Jordan District B, F/J-B county jurisdiction and establishing the same as commercial neighborhood CN and residential rural RR Falls/Jordan District B, F/J-B city jurisdiction.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilwoman Jose Hammond, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, if you open the vote. If you would please close the vote and report out.
The second motion passes 7-0.
The last motion before our consideration on this item is motion number 3, to adopt a consistency statement as required by NCGS 160D-605.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Johnson, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, if you will open the vote. Thank you, and if you will please close the vote and report out.
The motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We now turn our attention to item number 18, I believe, on our agenda. It's also a public hearing, and while those parties are coming forth, I would like to make an announcement to Mr. Jonte Dunston and Ms. Lisa, Leisa Butler. The items that you are signed up for are not agenda items on tonight. You would have an opportunity to come back on Thursday at 1 o'clock to sign up for our citizens' comments to address these items. I just didn't want you to stay in chambers all night waiting, but those items are not on our formal adopted agenda, and I would ask that you come back, if you would so like, on Thursday at 1 o'clock at our work session and sign up as a citizens matter, and we'll be sure and hear your words at that time. Thank you so much. I'm missing an item number. We're calling now item number 18, which is a zoning map change, 2201 West Cornwallis. And we will now hear from Ms. Roper.
Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and honorable council members, good evening. Brooke Roper with the Planning Department. A request for a zoning map change has been received from Terry Naranjo of Store Inc. for 6 parcels of land totaling 7.48 acres and located at 2201 West Cornwallis Road. The current zoning is residential suburban 20 and commercial general. The applicant proposes to change this designation to planned development residential 13.024 to allow the construction of up to 90 apartment units. The properties are currently designated commercial and recreation and open space on the future land use map. The proposed plan development residential 13.024 zoning is inconsistent with the designated future land use. If the proposed zoning is approved, staff recommends a change to the future land use map to medium-high density residential and retain the current recreation and open space designation. This case received a recommendation of denial from the Planning Commission by a vote of 9 to 0 at the November 15th, 2022 meeting. As a reminder, 2 motions are required for this application. This first motion is to approve the zoning ordinance. The second motion is to approve the consistency statement. Thank you. Staff and the applicant are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Roper. You have now heard the report from staff, and I'm now going to declare this public hearing open. First, are there any questions for staff from my colleagues? All right. We will now turn to our applicant and ask if you would state your name. We have a lot of people online to speak tonight as well, and just to prepare, and we have about 10 or 15 people here as well. So we will take persons who are in the audience after the applicant. As I said earlier, we try to keep the time equal on both sides. So we may have 2 minutes apiece for those. We'll start the applicant off with 10 minutes at this point in time, and then we will go from there.
Good evening. We do have a presentation we'd like to present, and we're trying to figure out how to set that up. While they're trying to do that, I could go ahead and introduce myself and introduce the individuals that are with me. That's somebody else's. That's the previous. All I have is the old one. What's your email address?
While they're getting ready, Mr. Finner, I received your card, but I would ask you also to return on Thursday to speak at 1 o'clock at our work session. Thank you, Mr. Finner. If you could come back on Thursday to speak during Citizens Matters. Yeah, thank you.
I apologize about this. I thought we could set it up here. I can make introductions if that's okay. I'm Ernie Brown. I'm the applicant, that's come before you. I am here. I'm actually a local guy, and hope this is the first of many opportunities I get to present in front of you to expand the housing choices that we need in this community. I have with me Tim Somerville, who is with Stewart Engineering, and Jeremy Porter, who is with Ramey Kemp as the traffic engineer. The first slide is actually, what we decided to do is to look at what the concerns that we heard from my conversations that I've had with the community, to also the concerns that we heard at the Planning Commission, and then try to figure out how we can answer those concerns to let them know, that we are listening to them and how to plan them out. The first slide that I would need to probably turn that over to Jeremy Porter to talk about traffic and what we're planning on doing to mitigate the issues with our traffic on that road.
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Jeremy Potter. I'm with Ramey Kemp Associates. I'm their director of North Carolina, and I bring over 20 years of traffic engineering and transportation engineering experience with me. As Ernie mentioned earlier, the project team heard the concerns in regards to traffic with this project back in the fall, and what we wanted to do this evening was to come out and address those concerns directly. Unfortunately, we don't have the slide right here, but essentially we coordinated and collaborated with NCDOT and the district office on a traffic impact analysis. Oh, here we go. It's up on the screen now. So what we did was conduct a traffic impact analysis for this site, coordinated with NCDOT in their district office for approval. What the analysis indicated and recommended, and the design includes, is a left turn lane, as you see, that begins at the site driveway and extends back to the interchange at Cornwallis Road. The analysis, as we've got indicated up here, indicated we would need to include enough storage to hold 2 of those left-turning vehicles to turn left into the site. And what this design indicates is the left turn lane would actually begin at the driveway, extend all the way back to the interchange, which will provide for at least 3, if not maybe a little bit more storage for vehicles. So what that does is it alleviates the concern for left-turning vehicles turning off of Cornwallis into the site. That concern of queuing and blocking traffic on Cornwallis or coming from 15501 to turn right onto Cornwallis. There was a concern of maybe traffic being blocked, and what this left turn lane would do, and what the analysis shows, is it would alleviate that blockage, and this storage would have enough to hold those vehicles so that anybody coming off of 15501 and turning right, or anyone traveling on Cornwallis past 15501 and past the site would not be blocked by any of those left turning vehicles. So that is what we're wanting to at least help exemplify this evening, because we understood that was a concern at the November meeting. On the next slide, as kind of a check of existing traffic, we had a project team member go out to the site, and what you're looking at here are photos taken a couple of weeks ago. As you see, March 16th and March 17th, looking to the left and to the right from the proposed site. So that's looking westbound and eastbound on Cornwallis to show you kind of the light traffic that's expected during the AM and PM peak hours. As you can see, it was at 5:10, 5:20, 5:40, and other times during the morning hours, as you can see, there was very little traffic out there. So that was kind of our check to kind of see what the analysis was showing versus existing traffic, with the analysis showing light traffic, and this was showing that as well. But with that, I will turn the presentation back over to Ernie.
Next slide, please. Some of the other concerns that they had was dealing with a lot of our life safety vehicles and with the safety with the school buses. And the picture that you see on the left-hand side was from the presentation that was done at the Planning Commission. And so I took it to heart, and I actually called the fire chief at the local station and asked them, do you guys have the capacity to take on this additional housing? And as his comment, you can see right there, I can kind of read it a little bit covering up, is that basically we're well equipped to add the additional units. Most of the concern for when they're adding housing isn't from infill, but rather from when neighborhoods are annexed outside and they have to more of a sprawl. The next slide is our discussion on the impact of schools. 70% of these units will be either smaller studios and 1-bedrooms, and therefore we are not really seeing a very much of a significant increase in schools, but we also don't believe that there's going to be any additional school bus runs that'll be needed, any additional school bus runs from what you see here. The next slide will probably, I'll turn this over to Tim to have more of a better discussion about the impacts to stormwater.
Thank you, and good evening, council members. I just want to point one thing out on there. The number on the development plan of proposed 1- and 2-bedroom studios is actually 65%, not 70. This was the older presentation that we couldn't get uploaded. But if you could go to the next slide. So one of the concerns we heard at the Planning Commission meeting was related to parking. We will be providing up to 134 parking spaces for the 90 proposed units. That equates to about 1.5 spaces per unit. The development is also going to encourage the use of bicycles by providing on-site bike storage, on-site repair facilities, and access to e-bikes. If you go to the next slide. Another concern we had heard was about flooding on neighboring properties. This site, along with several of the adjacent sites, are within a mapped floodplain, as you can see on your screen here. We are proposing no development within this existing floodplain. And this floodplain is part of an approximate 3,000 acre drainage area, and this site is 3 acres. And that represents about 1/10 of 1% of that entire drainage area. The site is also located at the bottom of the drainage area, and therefore any peak flow that is generated from the site will be gone through this floodplain before the peak flow from the 3,000 acre reaches the floodplain. And I can go into that more if you have questions on that later. And we will not be increasing the peak 100-year storm from this site. If you go to the next slide. Just wanted to point out that this request is less intense than what could be built out there now. We can get more units at a higher density with less impact to the environment. If you go to the next slide. Some ecological concerns that were brought up. From an ecological standpoint, this development will be required to capture all stormwater as reasonably practicable and treat for the removal of total suspended solids. A majority of the site will remain as it currently is. We're only disturbing about 28% of the overall site. Stream buffers, floodplain, and will be preserved to encourage natural filtration to the already treated stormwater. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I just wanted to speak there. We're proposing to remain buffers around the site. As you can see here, we have 80-foot trees for a 49-foot building. Next slide. There was a concern previously about the buffer, and this picture is actually taken on our property looking to the left, and all those trees you see in the picture on the left will be remained. In the next slide. And there is about 200 feet of existing trees that will remain between the property and the adjacent house, as someone expressed concern at the Planning Commission meeting about that. And one more. And this is shown on the future land use map. Oh, no, this is an old slide, sorry. The future place type map as apartments and townhomes for this site. So it's providing what Durham's looking for different housing types and different options. And with that, I'll give it back to Ernie.
Next slide, please. This is our final slide. What I thought I would focus on here is like what are our options if somebody wanted to live in this area and they worked at either downtown Durham or Duke. What I've showed here is what the 1 mile radius average home price had sold in that area was $683,613, which based on today's mortgage rates, that's about $4,600 a month. And that does not include taxes and insurance. 1 mile radius of what's pending is $584,665, which works out to just under $4,000 a month, not including taxes and insurance. The neighborhood that's directly next to me, one of the homes actually just sold about a month ago for $833,000, which was a 57% increase in 3 years, meaning that somebody were to try to buy a home in Canterbury, their mortgage, not including taxes and insurance, would be $5,600. I've had several conversations with Karen Lotto when she was in the position of Durham Affordable Housing Plan, and we spoke about not just this project, but about the 5 projects that I'm currently working on in y'all's community. And we discussed multiple different kinds of options of housing, multiple different kinds of housing between cottages, co-housing, and whatnot. We brought this one up because it is my first opportunity to be in front of you guys. She mentioned to me that she doesn't know how you can incorporate affordable units in this small of a project, and said that she would say proffering cash would be acceptable. We've worked through, and we are proffering 5 units at a 60% AMI. And then after doing some more digging into it, we're also looking to make a cash contribution towards the Affordable Housing Fund of $100,000.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions for our applicants at this time? All right. Everybody, we are close to the 9 o'clock hour when we have to take a break, so I'd like to go ahead and take that break now so that when we come back, we will begin again with all of our public speakers. We're going to take about 10 minutes to give them a break. Then we'll come back and we will go back to our citizens who are in the audience waiting to speak to us. And you will also have an opportunity for rebuttal. I think you used almost 12 minutes, not quite 12 minutes of time. So, all right, we'll see y'all back in 10 minutes.
Councilwoman.
If you're looking for a way to celebrate and promote environmental awareness and sustainability, our annual Earth Day Festival is the perfect event for you. This year's event will be held on Sunday, April 23rd from noon until 5 p.m. at Durham Central Park. If you come, you'll get to enjoy the Earth Day Market, which is a showcase of environmentally friendly businesses and organizations that will share their products and information. There will also be food to buy, performances, our Sustainable Transportation Expo, a family fun zone, free document shredding, a book giveaway, and of course, the always popular Earth Day Parade. Participants can make their own percussion instruments and dress up as their favorite plant or animal. The parade lineup begins at 2:15 p.m. and it starts at 2:30 p.m. More information about the day can be found at dprplaymore.org and through their social media.
Everyone in Durham should be able to find a home they can afford. That's why Forever Home Durham is creating affordable, livable, and inclusive communities for low to middle income residents. From renting to owning, find out how the city is helping more people find homes right here in Durham. Learn more at foreverhomedurham.com.
We, the people.
Nosotros, de gente.
我们人民.
Hum sab log. We the people hold these truths.
To be self-evident that all men
And women are created equal.
And shall be afforded
The inalienable right
To fair housing.
The City of Durham and HUD are committed to ensuring that everyone is treated equitably when searching for a place to call home.
All right, it is now the 9:03 hour. I do believe that we have a quorum. We'll hope that our other two council members and the attorney would call back, but we're going to try to go ahead and get started. We have a number of people who are in the audience tonight, and we are now turning our attention back to item 18, which is a zoning map change at 2201 West Cornwallis. We're going to begin with persons who are in chambers with us tonight to speak with us about this matter, and then we will turn to our public speakers on the internet. So I'm going to call 5 names if you will come, and I would ask, we have 9 cards, I believe, for in the audience, but we have about 20 online. So I am going to ask you if you could please limit your comments to 2 minutes apiece so that we can make sure that everybody is heard. I think our applicants used about 12 minutes, so they would then get the balance. We will balance it out with whatever time that they need to address any rebuttal. So we were going to start with and please, now I'm known to kill a name, okay, so just bear with us on this. I'm going to start with five names. Brent Strawn, S-T-R-A-W-N. Mr. Alan Dippy. Ms. Daneen, D-A-N-E-E-N Warner. Paloma Litton. And Carissa Edwards. And please forgive me if I did not pronounce your name right. All right. Mr. Strawn, if you just state your name, and then you may have your 3 minutes of time.
I'm gonna get my timer going right there, I guess, so I can see.
Yeah, they'll put it, they'll give it.
Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Brent Strawn. I live at 1234 Birch Bark in the Canterbury subdivision, which directly butts the property under consideration. I teach at Duke, where I'm a professor in the Divinity School and also the law school. Thank you for your attentiveness to this proposal and for listening to our concerns about it. Back in November, the Durham Planning Commission recognized that those of us directly affected by this development had legitimate worries. Our concerns relate, as we've already heard tonight, especially to traffic safety, pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular, including school bus routes and the proximity of Durham Fire Station 11. The concerns also relate to environmental impact, especially on the Sandy Creek ecosystem and the flooding issues well known in the protected wetlands behind Canterbury, and even more so in the Colony Park neighborhood downstream. My own property sits on the floodplain. It's one of the circled properties that the developer just showed. I've experienced firsthand the negative effects of oversaturated area with water that makes it very easy for trees to fall over, like the one that hit my house in September. My family moved to Durham from Gwinnett County, Georgia, home to 1 million residents, part of Metro Atlanta. We moved in 2019. There we repeatedly witnessed new...
Professor, would you suspend for just a moment? Staff, would somebody get that door, please? Close the door. Thank you. Sorry, sir.
Sure. There we repeatedly witnessed new housing developments built in our area with no attention to much needed infrastructure support. Already crowded schools, services of various sorts, and roads were not renovated, fixed, or expanded, just choked and strained. Durham is far from Gwinnett, thankfully, but the infrastructural concerns recognized by the Planning Commission warrant serious consideration. And yet, since their unanimously negative vote in November, the developer has not reached out to our HOA once. We've heard no word of revision or redress of the legitimate issues that have been raised by our neighborhood and others until tonight, which the presentation strikes me as a kind of doubling down and somewhat confusing attempt to justify a plan that was already considered carefully and rejected in November. By way of contrast, the Canterbury subdivision went through no less than 3 different iterations, each time thoughtfully improved in direct response to the concerns raised by affected neighbors. I'm grateful for their work and the improved community I live in as a result. I'm delighted to live in a desirable place like Durham. Development will and must happen in a great city like ours, but let it proceed carefully and wisely and with the best interests of the land and present and future citizens in mind. I respectfully ask that you reject this proposal as inappropriate in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strong. Mr. Dippy, if you would just state your name, and you will have your 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Alan Dippy. I'm a resident of 2514 Tryon Road in Durham, also in the Colony Park neighborhood. I wanted to add my perspective to this conversation as a longtime bike commuter to Duke University, who at one time pedaled daily on Cornwallis Road, including in front of the frontage of this property. I say one time because several years ago I changed my route to a much longer, more circuitous route using Ridge Road, Pickett Road, and others. It's a much longer ride, but it kept me off of Cornwallis Road altogether. And that's a concern I've heard from other riders, and they've made similar decisions. When we're considering a development that's attempting to work around a dearth of adequate and required vehicle parking by providing e-bike and scooter availability, I think we have to look closely at the roadway in terms of safety for all users. While I'm generally a huge fan of anything that gets more folks on bicycles in our city, huge fan. I think that this attempt to paint Cornwallis Road as some sort of bike and scooter-friendly facility is just flat out inaccurate in my experience. It has a number of factors working against it. The eastbound lanes are intermittent, not congruous, so cyclists can be forced from 4 feet of space into a narrow bike lane, sometimes abruptly. It's arguably even more precarious than the westbound side of Cornwallis, which has no bike lanes at all. Anyone who's driven east in the morning or west in the afternoon on this stretch of road knows that the sun glare is blinding, making it very difficult to see cyclists during peak commuting hours. And additionally, Cornwallis Road heads downhill from both directions as it approaches 15501 at that interchange, which means that, assuming the light is green, you've got cyclists going at a higher rate of speed, and the cars, many of which are taking a right turn onto highway on-ramps, are also going faster. In all my commutes on this route, I've managed to avoid any accidents, but the closest calls I've had, and the ones that keep me off that road now, were being cut off by drivers turning onto those ramps, one of which is very close to this proposed development's egress. So, Madam Mayor, City Council members, I hope you'll agree that this proposal is simply too large for this sliver of space, and no fleet of e-bikes or strollers, scooters, excuse me, is going to change that. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Dippy. Return to Mr. Nee Warner. For your 3 minutes, if you would just state your name, Ms. Warner.
Yes, my name is Deneen Warner. I live at 202 Mayweed Drive in Canterbury, and I come to you as an opponent of this project, and I'm speaking as a grandmother, but also as a hospice chaplain, where I see far too many accidents because of things that happen with cars on roads that are insufficient. But I want to tell you a story. I came here right before the pandemic to be close to my son and his family and my 2 grandkids, who at the time were 6 and 8. They were so excited about coming to my area where I was going to be living, because they live on the other side of Durham. And they said, oh my gosh, we're going to be able to come here, ride our bikes on Cornwallis, get up to Duke Forest, go to different city parks. And then I moved in, and I realized how absolutely dangerous Cornwallis Road is. I do not know where the applicant got those pictures at 8 and 3 and 5. That is not the way it is. That is not the way it is whatsoever. It's an absolute mess because of what my former colleague said. There's no shoulders. It's a narrow road. It's a double yellow line road at 35 miles an hour. And people don't do that. Just this weekend, when I was going 35, guess what? 2 people passed me on a double yellow line to get around me because I was going 35 miles an hour. It's also a yield when you come off that road from 15501, they don't yield. They come around to get and turn right on Cornwallis. They don't stop. And if there is a stacking lane there, they're going to bump right into all those cars because it goes right into that interchange. At the same time, what you're doing on this road is not being able to see, especially in the morning. Like my colleague said, the sun blindness is amazing. You're coming down the hill going east into town, and the blindness is so bad you would never be able to see any cars coming out of that driveway where it is for this proposed project. I ask you to please consider the dangerous situation we have. I do not need to see any more people in hospice because of accidents that happen on ill-equipped roads. Thank you for listening.
Ms. Litton, if you would state your name, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of the City of Durham Council. My name is Paloma Litton, and I live in 1214 Birch Bark Road in Canterbury. And I come here to respectfully oppose to the proposed rezoning based off safety traffic concerns. So one of the major concerns is the proximity to the proposed entrance to the 15501 and the require of this unsafe left turn. There is just 60 feet from this exit, from the exit of the 15501 to the entrance of the community. There is a potential of more than 600 new trips, and this is going to cause a backup into the 15501 and congestion in Cornwallis Road. In the current infrastructure at this intersection is inadequate to handle the proposed increased demand. As of the Planning Commission hearing, the North Carolina Department of Transportation had not approved any specific plan for this intersection. Apparently, as we heard today, this is the first time that we hear that because the builder has not been in contact with our community. Now they are proposing to build a 3-4 car spillway and the intersection. Still, I don't see how within 60 feet, cars that are exiting the 15501 can safely split into 2 lanes. Also, I heard today that the builder is planning to remove in future this intersection if enough accidents occur after some time. So I would like to ask the builder how many accidents are enough. If the left turn is removed, then the community that they are proposing will have only one right in and right out. This will potentially force drivers to illegally conduct a U-turn in the Canterbury community. We heard that this proposal will increase and improve transportability, but the closest bus stop is 1.2 miles away, and there are no safe pedestrian pathways. We heard about electric bikes, scooters as a way of transportation. There are no bicycle lines, no shoulders, and I want to remind that Cornwallis is designated by the City of Durham as an orange road. This orange road is just for experienced riders, it's not for commuters, and we don't want scooters in the highways. So this intersection, also another concern is the parking space is not appropriate, is not adequate for 90 units. The developer is considered 1 car per unit. This is not realistic. We heard about the school buses, we heard about the Durham Fire Station unit is a main exit road for this fire station. We don't want congestion in the main road of emergency services. For this, I respectfully urge you to consider this potential negative impact on traffic safety and on the surrounding community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards?
Hi, good evening. My name is Carissa Edwards. I live at 4 Creek View Lane, which is the townhouse community directly south of the site. We are a community of 40-year-old wooden townhomes that I guarantee are not even the 30% value that the developer quoted earlier as the average home price. We're rotting. It's cute. I also want to implore you tonight to consider the difference between community sacrifice versus something being done at community expense. Communities, neighborhoods are built on sacrifice. It's a cup of sugar. It's a pair of earplugs because there's a 5-year-old who lives upstairs. It's dealing with construction noise and general more traffic in Durham as we grow and get bigger. But there's also a difference between that and being at community's expense. For this particular builder, he's proposing up until tonight, no affordable housing and no contribution. I understand he said differently tonight. I also understand that commitment is not in writing. Also, this developer has presented the minimum amount and not a percentage more for tree preservation or for open space requirements. However, he's quite generous with his impervious surface, as he has proposed 28% impervious surface, which is above the amount recommended by North Carolina. The detail I'd like to include to you, given that my background is in construction as a previous assistant project manager on a $54 million apartment complex, is that 24% is done or is used with the idea that the surrounding percentages are porous surfaces. On this particular lot, since the other surfaces are wetland and floodplain and stream buffer, they are not porous. So when we consider the combination of the developer's impervious surface plus the already impaired surfaces, that's not a technical term, we're looking at a number that's closer to the 80 percentile range. Along those lines, this lot directly drains down into the Sandy Creek Park. The emphasis there and the relevance there being that in 2006, Durham City Council approved and institutionalized multiple $million project to stabilize the Sandy Creek watershed just to sustain at the existing conditions. In 2014, after a 9-year review period, those efforts were deemed to be successful. But that project that taxpayers contributed multiple millions of dollars towards is now directly downstream of a development that is going to produce an incredibly impaired surface. I'd also like to bring to the council's attention some consistent inconsistencies. Even within the developer's current plans, there's an inconsistency towards the maximum building height. On page 1 of Exhibit D, 60 feet maximum building height. Page 3 of Exhibit D, 48 feet maximum height. The lot is 7 acres, yet even tonight, the developer and his team gave you a percentage that he admitted was based off a 3%, or excuse me, a 3-acre lot. Again, I repeat, the lot is 7. I appreciate the developer's creativity from a personal standpoint. However, thank you.
Recording stopped.
I will now call the last 4 names for persons who are present with us in chambers this evening. Mr. Lewis Carson, Mr. Rich Foley, Ms. Leslie Laufer, and Evan Rosoff. And please forgive me if I didn't pronounce it. I think we have been given 3 minutes, is that right? Okay. All right, thank you. Yes, sir, if you would just state your name.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lewis Carson. My address is 2510 Linear Place. I would like to ask for the City Council's help by voting against this proposal. The Planning Commission in their November hearing voted unanimously against this proposal. I ask City Council members to do the same, please. The size of this building is too big. I ask for your help to deny this project until it's reduced in size. Size reduction will be the best way to address stormwater runoff problems and traffic safety issues. I'm not against development here. However, there are problems with this development. It uses sand filtration for stormwater control instead of a retention pond, which slows water flow and improves the quality of the water. I asked for a retention pond out of the floodplain that's the same type as the one in the next door neighborhood. There are serious traffic safety issues with the current proposal. The entrance to the development is very close to the stoplight intersections, and access would have an extremely short left turn lane on Cornwallis. There's no pedestrian access under the 15501 bridges. There's unsafe bicycle access around those same intersections. The nearest bus stop, if one could walk there safely, is 1.2 miles away. There's no overflow parking on Cornwallis Road. Finally, I would note that the traffic engineer's photos shown earlier tonight were all taken during spring break at both Duke and UNC. These problems are exacerbated by a size of 90 units and 4 stories. It seems to me a reasonable size would be half that. The only mechanism to reduce size is to ask for denial by the City Council. Thank you for your consideration on this. Finally, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the mayor and to the council members for their service to our great city.
Thank you, sir. Foley, you will state your name, sir.
My name is Rich Foley. I live at 2522 Lanier Place in the Welcome Circle neighborhood. I will limit my comments to the issue of pedestrian and bicycle safety. Every year, I run a marathon. Every year, I bike a century. That's 100 miles in a day. I train for these events by always running right from my very own front door, which means that the hundreds of miles that I run in a year, the thousands of miles which I put on my bike, every daily workout puts me on exactly this section of Cornwallis Road twice, since it's the only way in or out of my neighborhood. On the one hand, our neighborhood seems to be ideally situated. Only a half mile on Cornwallis gets you to the JCC and to an access point for the Al Bueller Trail, which is an absolute gem of our community. The trail itself provides further access to Duke Gardens and to Duke West Campus. On the other hand, that half mile on Cornwallis takes us across the access point of this proposed development, which is then immediately followed by crossing 2 sets of on-off ramps for 15501, where there isn't so much as a single crosswalk. As things currently stand, the situation is at the very limit of what any sane pedestrian would venture. The level of additional traffic that comes with this particular proposal, but more importantly, the contorted logistics of how this new traffic would get in or out of the development so close to those 15501 ramps, this would effectively sever the connection for pedestrians and cyclists between our neighborhood and so much of what it is that makes living there a joy. By profession, I'm an actuary. As such, I'm not prone to exaggeration or hyperbole when I look at my shoes a lot. So when I say that this intersection is dangerous and this specific proposal for development is potentially life-threatening, I hope you will take these concerns seriously, particularly given my unusual experience in cycling and running. This proposal, as it stands, threatens to cut off our community entirely, the pedestrians and cyclists in our community entirely, where no sane person would venture out under any circumstances without first turning yet another car key in yet another car ignition. And I urge you to vote against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. Ms. Laufer?
Thank you.
Just state your full name for me, please.
Your Honor, Leslie Ann Laufer. I live at 2619 West Cornwallis Road. I've been a resident there since 1978, which is a long time ago. Hard to believe. I only have 2. I had more comments, but I only have 2 now because everything has been so well addressed. With regard to the traffic, if this goes through, I would note that since November, what's in there is now the note that the NCDOT has recognized that there would be a potential problem with the left-hand turn lane and a 3-car storage at that site. It is also stating that at some point the NCDOT may trigger, although at what point, whether it's after a certain number of casualties, whether it's after something else, will trigger a right-hand only ingress and egress. The developer has committed texturally only to pay for the left-hand turn lanes and any accoutrements there too, acquisition for the left-hand turn lane or the extra bicycle lane, fronting just this, because there's no bike lanes to connect to, no sidewalks to connect to. The developer has not committed to paying for any improvements to the road that might be necessitated by turning this into a right-hand only ingress and egress, which means traffic will be funneled up Cornwallis Road or down Cornwallis Road into already existing neighborhoods, further endangering our kids walking in the neighborhoods, playing in the neighborhoods, as well as pedestrian and cyclists, funneling traffic into other neighborhoods. What can help? I don't want it. He hasn't addressed whether he will pay, and there should be a textual commitment to pay for any further road improvements, including, but not limited to, roundabouts, both east and west of the interchange, and land acquisition there too, in order to mitigate if this project should go forward. And I am an opponent of the project to mitigate. If it's not in text, it's not a commitment. Finally, regarding affordable housing, the PDR, Special District, has specific words that talk about innovative design. I don't see why we can't reserve our PDR special districts for affordable housing. And why is this not, even if this were affordable, what's not, it's basically a substandard affordable innovative housing. It's warehousing residents into these anonymous generic units with no outside access. It's not green, no commitment to be green or energy efficient. As far as I can see, there are no community or social spaces, and as I understand, I'm not even sure there's a basketball court planned or a playground. The front units face 15501 with all of the noise and pollution, and it is noisy. At 11 o'clock at night, walking through that neighborhood, I can hear the traffic. So, and I'm on the other side of Welcome, maybe a half a mile up. More like an extended stay. Again, I would just say this is the wrong size and scale for the site. As far as affordable housing goes, it falls far short of it. What other communities have accomplished to create decent, affordable multifamily spaces on a human scale.
Thank you, Ms. Laufer. I have Mr. Evan Rosoff. Is he still with us tonight? EVANROSOFF on 2619 West Cornwallis. All right, we will now move to our speakers on the internet. We have several of those tonight as well. We will start with Mr. Robert Allen. Mr. Allen. And we will follow Mr. Allen with Ms. Pamela Trent. Mr. Robert Allen. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Allen. We have Ms. Pamela Trent listed as a resource person on the internet.
Madam Mayor, there is no Pamela Trent in the queue.
Thank you. Ms. Sarah Schultz, SCHULZ.
There's no Sarah Schultz.
Ilana Miller. She has not indicated what side she would be speaking for. YLANA Miller.
Ms. Miller is no longer in the queue.
Mr. Arthur Zucco, Z-U-C-O.
Yes,
last
Mr.
name.
Zucco is here.
Mr. Zucco is registered as an opponent. Mr. Zucco, there you are. Mr. Zucco, you will have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. My name is Arthur Zucco. I live at 115 Sunburst Drive in the neighboring community. After a 9-0 Planning Commission denial, the applicant's changes today are noted. However, they cannot make more land nor improve an impaired floodplain, only worsen it. A development has to make sense. Land and access along Cornwallis must be able to support the planned development size of 90 units and 130 plus parking spaces. This development does not meet that criteria. The lot must be able to support the stormwater needs and not pose flood risk and property damage to neighboring communities and constituents. This development does not meet the criteria. The development must not pose unnecessary risk to children, constituents, bikers on our roads, and emergency responders through congestion, despite a 20-minute picture assessment on spring break on a Friday morning. And after a 9-0 Planning Commission vote against the development, here we are. Council members, I respectfully ask you to vote against this submission. This development does not make sense. It does not meet the criteria of making sense. Please vote against. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zuko. I'll now turn our attention to Ms. Janice Gilchrist, Gilchrist.
Madam Mayor, there is no Janice Gilchrist in the queue.
Brandon Warner, Warner.
Mr. Warner is not in the queue.
Sean Curtis, Curtis.
There's a Sarah Curtis, but no Sean. It's the same.
No Sean Curtis, Shawn, okay. Thomas Billington, Billington.
Yes, Mr. Billington's in the queue.
Mr. Billington, you would have 3 minutes, sir. Mr. Thomas Billington, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sorry.
All right, and we can hear you as well, Mr. Billington. You may proceed.
All right. All right, well, thank you so much for your time tonight. I live at 1233 Birch Bark Road, which is directly adjacent to the proposal under discussion. Some of my biggest concerns are traffic safety, compatibility, and flooding. And when it comes to traffic safety, the only access point to get in and out of this development would be very tight and hazardous to the residents living there. And additionally, Cornwallis is very unsafe, as mentioned plenty of times tonight, for bicyclists today. So despite the bikeability, proximity to various amenities, almost certainly these amenities will need to be reached by private vehicle, which is inducing more automobile traffic and higher vehicle miles traveled, which increases the auto dependency, contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and worsening Durham's traffic violence problems. And as for compatibility, I favor redevelopment and more affordable housing, but redevelopment compatible in scale and design, not a massive structure containing more than 100,000 square feet, a wall 60 feet high, 60 feet wide, and 360 feet long, set back only 21 feet from, our property line, from one of our neighbors' houses. It's in our backyards with no mature tree buffer looming over our community. And lastly, the potential flooding, which is a new development of 90 units and impervious surfaces for parking, would cause additional runoff issues for downstream residents already experiencing flooding. This will add more water volume to the flooded area. In conclusion, I believe an apartment building of this size is not an ideal use on this specific parcel. Too much density in one place. This would be a good location for Durham to put a small park or the developer to significantly scale back on the number of units and lower the building height. And these are concerns shared and extracted from what the Planning Commissioner said. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Billington. Ms. Wendy Edds, EDDS.
Madam Mayor, there's no Wendy Edds in the queue.
Susan Baker.
Susan Baker was in the queue. I don't see her any longer.
No longer there. Elizabeth Dondero, Dondero.
Madam Mayor, there's no Elizabeth Dondero.
Larry Reed, Reed.
Yes.
Mr. Reed, if you could hear me, if you can hear me, sir, if you would state your name and you would have your 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Larry Reed. I live at 2407 Tryon Road in Colony Park. We sent a series of photos to you all at the end of the week that shows the multiple flooding events that we have experienced already in our community. My next door neighbor, Chambers, has had flood damage. Carson DeWitt's, the photos show the flood water coming right up to the back door of their house. We have had to move our cars higher up on Welcome to avoid the floodwaters coming into our driveway. And Lucy Lincoln, who just recently passed away, her daughter has been complaining for years because she lives immediately adjacent to our community lot. We sent photos showing that Tanglewood is flooded over, cutting off the access from Tryon Road to Tanglewood to Welcome. Not only that, our community lot, which has been critical to our community built a picnic shelter there. We have our community events, our community meetings and picnics on Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, a variety of events like that. And that is threatened by the flooding that we have there. We also have playgrounds we've built. We have Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, church meetings there. And they're all, if you'll see those photos, have been flooded over. We have a picture of a young boy with his bicycle flooded up to the axle, riding in our community lot, not to mention the flooding of our little neighborhood pool. So our concern is we're downstream from this community. And as other people said, the overflow, the runoff that will come downstream from that, from all that impervious space that is there, will make life much worse for our community, which has been here for decades, and our immediate folks such as we, who are threatened with this. We have to have flood insurance as our neighbors do. And our concern is this can only exacerbate the problems to me, our immediate neighbors, our community in dealing with that, and our road systems along this way. So we really ask that you protect us. We've been living here for decades, and we would hope that City Council would protect us from exacerbating the flooding conditions that threaten our homes and community survival at this point. Thank you very much.
Miss Amy Wyron Robinson, W-Y-R-O-N Robinson.
Madam Mayor, there is no Amy Wyron Robinson in the queue.
Mike Kurlowski, K-I-R-L-A-U-S-K-I.
Yes, Mr. Kurlowski's in the queue.
Mr. Kurlowski, if you can hear me, sir, if you would state your name and you would have your 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Hi, council members. My name is Mike Kurlowski, and as a HOA board member for the adjacent community of Canterbury, I have a whole new level of respect for what you do. I've helped manage this community of 58 homes for the past couple of years, and let me tell you, I've had to deal with a wide array of issues and disagreements. I say this knowing it pales in comparison to I know what you have to deal with. However, since this hearing was announced, we have seen a unified, consistent response from our community and the surrounding ones that continues to astonish me. Just since February, we've seen 219 people take the time to scan our signs, sent you over 150 emails that I can assure you are real people who care, and have visited our webpage for this rezoning 2,213 times. Now, in this community, we have a vast array of people, and most understand the growing need for housing in Durham, and many want to help, but they want it done right, and they want it done responsibly. They also made it very clear to 3 different iterations of our HOA board, 3 public developer sessions, and the planning commissioners that they don't feel like they should have to give up their concerns in order to arrive at an agreement with a developer who just focuses on maximizing profits and manipulating laws and ordinances and wasting time taking pictures of traffic during spring break instead of listening to our concerns. A developer whose design engineer misstated the direction of Sandy Creek during the Planning Commission. That's the design we're looking at tonight. We can assure you from the golf balls that are taken out of the Sandy Creek Park every year that the golf balls, unlike trout, are not swimming upstream, they are downstream from our property. This is a developer and engineering group who behind closed doors are probably saying some interesting things right now. And about Durham, there's no way we can get a plan approved like this here. It's too large. give it a shot. The city council will prove anything. Yeah, they're desperate for housing. They're ignoring all the UDO, even when the Planning Commission is unanimously opposed. Council members, I ask you, what message do we want to send to the developer? What do you want the word on the street to be? That Durham is open for business or that Durham is open for exploitation? Please hear the concerns of the hundreds of people who've participated on this case. Promote housing fairness, but build responsibly and fairly to your existing residents while we grow. Vote no on cases like this or any like it when you see similar warning signs. Send a message to developers. They must take our concerns seriously. If the developer truly expects usage of public transit and bicycles to qualify the project.
Mr. Kurlowski, that's your time, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Jeff Kallio, Kallio.
Mr. Kallio is not in the queue.
Mr. Brent Strawn, I think Mr. Strawn is present. Thank you, Mr. Strawn. Ms. Sarah Curtis, S-A-R-A, Curtis this time.
Yes, Ms. Curtis is in the queue.
Ms. Curtis, you have the floor, ma'am. If you will state your name, you have your 3 minutes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Sarah Curtis. I'm a resident on Evans Street, and we're just here to support in opposition of the project and agree with all of the current facts that have been stated and opinions, and just would like to I'm sorry. Yes, we're in opposition of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis. We turn our attention to Ms. Janice Smith, Janise Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Madam Mayor, there are two of them.
We have two Janise Smiths. Ms. Janice Smith, one of you would please come on the line. You have 3 minutes if you will state your name, ma'am. Ms. Smith, we see your hand raised. Are you unmuted, ma'am? Ms. Smith, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, Ms. Smith, is it just one Janice, Janise Smith? We have you listed.
I think so. I'm
Okay.
sorry about that.
That's okay, Ms. Smith. You have your 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm also in opposition to this. I live at 4 Waterstone Court, part of the Trinity Ridge neighborhood. And I agree and just want to reiterate everything that was said about the traffic concerns, the flooding issues. I also really want to highlight that those pictures do not accurately represent the traffic in the morning or the afternoon. Those people clearly are not taking their kids to school in the morning on a normal school day, which can back up over half a mile on Cornwallis. So I don't know what trick they were playing to give you those pictures, but they do not currently accurately represent the traffic on Cornwallis, which is pretty backed up and heavy in the morning and the afternoon, and is getting heavier throughout the day. So I just want to reiterate, those pictures do not accurately represent what traffic is actually like. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Turn our attention to Johnny, Joni Hohmeier, Hohmeier. Oh, all right. Thank you, ma'am. If you would come forth. We have you listed as being on the internet.
Yes, I registered, but I was able to make it down in person. So thank you very much for having me. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say that I heard from your own lips this evening, as well as several people here on the council, the word safety. And from what I've heard from all of the presentations here today, this does not sound like a very safe proposal for development in the area. And also, the picture of the bus, the school bus there, I believe the concern really is for the, not necessarily the growth of additional students, but the ones that are currently getting on and off school buses, that the traffic and the increase in traffic and potential for possibly passing school buses or illegal U-turns and so forth. Very unsafe situation. So thank you very much. I am opposed to this, and thank you for listening to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Returning to the internet, Mr. Stephen Barnes, I have you listed as an opponent, but we don't have an actual item. Is this an agenda item you would like to speak to, sir? Stephen
No, ma'am.
Barnes.
This is Stephen Barnes. I'm actually for the case that was postponed until May 15th.
All right, thank you so much, sir. If you will come back then, and please, if you just make sure that we have a number. We didn't have a number for which one you were trying to address, okay? Thank you for being with us this evening. I return to one speaker in the audience. I just received this card from a Mr. Rick Larson. You have 3 minutes, sir, and then we will return back to our applicants.
Thank you. I don't know if the council members have been able to see the flooding photos that we sent today, but we do have a presentation that we'd like to provide you. I'm not sure how to get there on here. Help. Brooke. I just know how to get to the there we go, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Middleton, council members, thanks for the opportunity to speak in opposition to this proposal. I had a long list of topics, and I'll just focus in on two. One is the flooding. As you, I think, have heard, we're about 200 yards downstream on Sandy Creek from the proposed development. And our neighborhood, as has been mentioned, has been inundated by Sandy Creek for many years. So can you see these photographs? Here's 2018, here's 2015, here's 2013, here's 2011. I think Larry referred to this photo. 2008. This is our pool, which we're currently getting ready to renovate. It's the oldest continually operating pool in Durham County. And when something like this happens, it's not good for any of it, as you can imagine. So the flooding issues are real, and adding impervious surfaces, as we've talked about, just upstream, whenever those flows come out, it doesn't matter. This is what happens. It's a very serious issue for us. So I hope you'll take that into consideration. The other point that I would make is that, as you've heard, the developer is committing to 134 parking spaces. The UDO calls for 2 parking spaces per unit. You can have an amendment to that if you provide good access to public transportation or to alternative vehicular traffic. Neither of those is true here. As someone said, it's 1.2 miles to walk to the local bus station, local bus stop, not a safe walk, let me tell you. And secondly, as Alan talked about, riding a bike or an e-bike, which we have on this road, is dangerous. It's just not made for that kind of alternative transportation. So yes, we need more housing in Durham, no question about that. What we need is housing that is done responsibly, site appropriate, to the right scale, and that has access to public and alternative transportation. This is not that proposal. This is an attempt to put market rate, a major development on a very small site that sits in a floodplain. So thanks for your consideration.
think those are all of our speakers here who are speaking as opponents. We now turn to our applicants for rebuttal. It looks like you have about 45 minutes, and you may rebut.
Again, thank you for your time to have a rebuttal. I've asked actually the staff to pull back up our presentation because a lot of the concerns we would be able to present in the photos. I will ask that both the engineers that are with me address where their specialty is. The first one being Jeremy to discuss traffic and the concerns we heard, and then for Tim to discuss the stormwater issues. And then last, I would like to actually discuss what I've done actually up to community outreach over the 4 years that I've been working to bring this project to council.
Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, thank you again. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, perfect. We did hear a lot of concern in regards to the traffic flow through here, and we just wanted to reiterate one more time that our study was coordinated with and approved by the North Carolina Department of Transportation and their district engineer's office. And what is shown here is kind of that visual depiction of what that turn lane would look like. And the design of that turn lane, based on the analysis, would hold the vehicles that are projected to be turning into, as a left, into the development. So there would not be a concern of traffic coming down Cornwallis or coming off 15501 to turn right onto Cornwallis and being blocked by vehicles. So that was one thing we did want to point out, that was coordinated with the district engineer. We also do recognize and agree that we've coordinated with the district engineer in regards to the intersection. And the intersection, if the district engineer dictates later on to change to a right in, right out, that is something our client has agreed to. Part of the discussion with the Department of Transportation was to start out with this left turn lane due to the fact that if you did not have that turn lane, it would potentially force, and it was right in, right out, you would force vehicles further down Cornwallis to make a U-turn wherever they kind of wanted to, or you'd need to provide a U-turn bulb out and right away at that point. So there'd be some property impacts if you wanted to have a bulb out for a U-turn location if you did not provide that left turn. So that was something that we coordinated with the Department of Transportation on. So what they agreed was if this was right in, right out, you would have to have some sort of a U-turn location, and obviously we wouldn't want drivers to just kind of pick their own location at random of making a U-turn. You'd want to designate that, which would require right-of-way and construction and property impacts, which is why this initial concept was discussed and agreed to with the Department of Transportation, because this does provide the storage that was required and dictated by the traffic analysis. We also had some other concerns about bike and ped safety that were understood, and our client has been committed and is willing to commit to working with the district engineer, obviously, with this intersection and collaborating with the district and Department of Transportation if there are some safety improvements that need to be made with regards to this development and adjacent to this development. I mean, those are conversations the developer and our client obviously are willing to have to address those safety concerns. But obviously wanted to talk through this again and just indicate that this was coordinated with the Department of Transportation and approved by their district engineer.
Thank you again for hearing us. A lot of people talked. I tried to take as many notes as I could, so I'll try to address everything related to some of the items that I heard. One of them we kept coming up was trying to do things that are not in the Unified Development Ordinance. That is not possible. We cannot do that. This site plan will be fully in compliance with everything that is in the Unified Development Ordinance. There's a comment about the parking. We're proposing up to 134 parking spaces, which is about 1.5 spaces per unit. The UDO does require 2. There are stipulations in there to reduce that number. A few of them we will be utilizing. One is providing additional tree save area above the minimum of 20% can get you a reduction in parking, and also the affordable housing component. Providing the affordable housing units allows a reduction in the parking. So, we're not providing the 2 per unit, but we will be utilizing other areas to meet the minimum requirements for parking, as well as other items. If I may have missed anything, I apologize. Another one that kept coming up was the downstream flooding, and if you could go to maybe 4 slides from here. One more. Thank you. So as I noted earlier, our proposed site is located in a FEMA MAP floodplain, as well as both of the adjacent neighborhoods, as well as some other pictures. They are in a mapped 100-year floodplain. They are going to be subject to flooding. You know, the pictures that were shown, I sympathize, I understand that flooding is a concern, but this development is not going to impact, it's not going to raise that floodplain. The overall drainage area to this site is over 3,000 acres. And I'll get to what someone else mentioned earlier, we're about 3 acres of a development, so that's 0.1% of the overall drainage area. That is not going to have any effect on the floodplain. And I also want to point out too, as far as hydrology goes, the way you map a hydrology is you figure out what the peak flow is from the overall drainage area, the entire 3,000 acres, and that's how much water is going to be coming down to this point at the peak flow. That could take several days. As you know, when we get a hurricane or big storm comes through, it takes 4 or 5 days before that flooding really reaches its maximum area. With this site being right directly at the floodplain with the impervious surface, that peak flow that is generated from the additional impervious surface that we were providing will be long gone downstream into the Jordan Lake before that peak hits from upstream several days later. Okay. So yeah, I mean that's how the hydrology works. A small bucket is not going to have a significant raise on a 3,000 acre floodplain. And then there was a comment about so yeah, I was using the 3 acres of developable area. This site is 7.487 acres. We are proposing 28% of it to be disturbed. That equals about 2 acres. I was rounding up to 3 to try and keep the numbers simple using whole numbers. I think the person that commented mentioned she's maybe an engineer in construction, so maybe likes exact numbers. So 2.09 acres is what we will be disturbing. That leaves 5.39 acres of natural area, which will be preserved. It promotes water infiltration, also promotes wildlife habitats. It is misleading to say that we could come in and bulldoze this entire site and only provide 24% impervious surface. However, the remainder of that could be lots that are graded, compacted. People use fertilizer on their lawns. All of that is just as big as a pollution as impervious surface that goes into the stream. So by providing 5.39 acres of natural area, I feel like that's the best steward of the land rather than just wiping it all out. And only paving 24% of it. I think that's all the notes that I had that I wanted to address. So thank you for your time, and we're available for any questions.
The last thing that I will address with you guys is they mentioned that I haven't reached out to them since Planning Commission. Up until Planning Commission, I have been working on this site for 4 years, and I've had at least 5 to 8 Zoom calls, emails with the HOA next door. I've met with individuals at Canterbury, actually at Namu, to discuss this project. I've actually been to individuals' houses that live in Canterbury to address and talk to them about their concerns. And they all seem to basically understand where I was coming from. So I have had several conversations. I stopped having conversations when the president of the HOA told me that I was not allowed to speak to anybody that lives in Canterbury. I had to address all of my conversations with the community to him. That is, well, the one last thing I guess I could say is I'm an avid e-biker. I'm a believer in e-bikes. I was excited to hear about the Bull City e-bike program. I'm a believer that it can help people make their paychecks go further by using it as an alternative. And I have actually ridden on my e-bike from this site to Duke Hospital, to downtown Durham, to Foster's and Google Hoff, back to this site. And I will tell you, I felt very comfortable on it, but I also ride one every day. And we have 35 minutes, and so I will tell you that my father is a preacher, so if I need to turn that attribute on, I can.
Thank you for your time this evening. And I would like to address, there are two people, I believe, who joined the queue late. I am sorry, I believe it's Mr. James Rucker and Mr. Michael Hennessy. I've been informed that you have joined the queue and would like to speak. I'm sorry we won't be able to accommodate that request tonight. If you are looking at me on the internet, this is the list that we develop in advance for people who would like to sign up in order that we may have a proper record. I would ask that you contact our clerk's office and provide your comments in a written form for us to receive, but we are trying to balance those who are here, those on the internet, and to make sure that our time allotment is correct as we're supposed to balance that, which is why we try to do it in a format that is fair to all parties. So if you have joined the queue late tonight, we will not be able to accommodate your request, but we would ask that you put those comments in writing to us. We appreciate it. At this time, I will now declare the public hearing to be closed, and the matter is back before the council for any discussion amongst my colleagues.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank all of the residents and citizens and neighbors who bore with us tonight to come out to speak on this matter, to the developers as well. A couple of things. Firstly, I want to address any concern about the UDO. It's not Unified Development Options. It's an ordinance. So we have to abide by the UDO. There's no options or skirting around. So I want to, that does not mean that there aren't legitimate questions to put to developers, but the UDO is an ordinance, it's law. Any suggestion that the council tries to skirt that or just ignores it, Raleigh's watching. We don't get to do that. So I just want to put that assurance out there. With that said, this is a fascinating case because unlike expanding our boundaries of the city, this is infill development, which usually folk get excited about when it's not expanding the boundaries, if it's done right. I think one of the comments I read from one of our planners was that too much density in one place in a city, that's why buildings are taller in cities, because you're stacking rather than going out. I think the joke in planning is folks support development, but the only things they don't support are height and sprawl. Other than that, you can do whatever you want. So for an infill development, height is how we do that in a growing, burgeoning city, rather than expanding our boundaries. So I do want to, that's something we have to think about as council members when we make these type of decisions. I'm also, I'm fascinated by some of the comments about the number of units. I don't want to do violence to anybody's comments, but is it the case that if the developer had just said 45 rather than 90, this really would be all right? That this would have disposed of any of the discussions we're having? It would have addressed the stormwater issues. It would have addressed the traffic issues if the number were 45 as opposed to 90. I really think there's a much more nuanced and deeper conversation going on here with respect to how do we manage a growing city? How do we, I think someone used the words protect our residents, but also welcome new residents who will then become protectees as well. I'm always fascinated in these conversations because a lot of the arguments made would preclude where you live being built. In many of these discussions, actually, some of the arguments that are made were the same arguments made before your house got built. And so we as a council have to continually manage that tension between those that are here and those that are coming, because they are coming, and we can't stop that. With that said, the developer, I did have a question. I just wanted to revisit, how many community meetings did you have? One of the comments about from the planner was that you showed disregard for the local communities in Greater Durham. So just give me briefly, how many sessions did you have with community members? What was the attendance like? And are you hearing anything tonight that you didn't hear at those sessions?
I had several. If I probably had to, so actually Katie Hamilton was an individual that was helping me originally with this when she was working for Stewart Engineering, and I asked her if she could remember, and she said we did between 10 to 15 meetings between me and her, and just me, meeting with them to discuss their concerns. Their concerns were height and the fact that the building would be too close to their current house. There's a 50-foot buffer between my project and their community. And this 50-foot buffer is y'all's greenway buffer that has grown trees that we went out and measured that were between 80 to 120 feet high. This building is roughly 48 feet high. And in this building, the site actually sits lower than the community next door. So it won't have a 4-foot feel to it based on the distance, the 50-foot buffer of trees that are between us, and the fact that the site actually sits lower than some of the houses that are in Canterbury. And I asked, sorry, last thing. I did meet with them, and I actually had really positive feedback when I met with about 12 to 13 of them at Namu to discuss with them. Because I actually, ironically enough, met a gentleman, our kids were swimming together, and we just started talking about what we do, where do you live, kind of thing, and found out he lives here. And so I asked him, I said, I know you guys have concerns.
Folks, please, folks.
I'm going to ask you, please, let's have a.
One of the members that was there was the vice president of their HOA, I believe, or their treasurer. And what I asked him is I said, hey, I want to be a good neighbor. I want to, not feel like this is going to be contentious. And I offered things to them. I said, do you have a site that's next to me? I said, what would you guys like to do with it? And they said, we'd like it to turn into a green space. So I offered to that group that we would test the soil and see if that is a site that the dirt that is there that was dumped from when their development was put in, if that is something that could be mass graded across mine and smoothed out and giving them an actual pad ready for them to do something with. Or is it dirt that is useless and needs to be hauled off? The group that I met with seemed very on board with giving me that opportunity to do that. That is when I then heard from their current president, HO. I don't know, he was the individual that actually sold his house. I don't know if he's their president anymore. He's the one that reached out to me and said, any communications with anybody that lives in Canterbury has to come through me.
And when was that representation made to you?
I met with them probably this past summer. And that's when I started having conversations with them, and I felt like they were actually productive conversations. And then once the gentleman, I believe his name was Chris, he's either the vice president or he's the treasurer of the HOA at Canterbury. He brought that to the current HOA group. I believe they have 4, I'm not sure. And that is when he called me and said, the other guys don't want to work with you. And he actually voiced his opinion that he was not of the same mindset as them.
All right, I'm going to ask you not to speak. Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate you.
Thank you. With respect to the 5 units at 60% AMI, how long would that commitment be for those units at 60%?
I didn't have a timetable on it. I mean, I believe y'all's original is 30 years.
Right. I think I'm going to yield now to my colleagues. And they usually ask all the things I want to ask, so I'll yield now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sure. Thank you, Councilwoman Caballero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple questions for staff. Hi, good evening. What could be built by right here? Let me pull that up.
So the most intense use under the current zoning designation is 6 units for residential suburban 20 portion of the site, and a fast food restaurant with a drive-through window of the commercial, for the commercial general portion of the site.
Thank you. Could I assume that the amount of trips for a fast food restaurant with traffic would be higher than what the applicant is asking for right now?
Yes.
Yes, Bill Judge, Assistant Transportation Director. The fast food trip generation site for the commercial portion would be significantly higher in terms of number of trips than the 90 proposed apartments. I can find the exact, but it's in one of the tables in the staff report, in one of the appendix, the exact number of trips.
Thank you. I have a question for the applicant now, and this is to your best of your ability, and I understand you may not be able to give me the best number, but for 6 units, I'm assuming single family, what would be the cost on the market once it's done for that, for each unit?
Depends on the square footage of the home.
If you were trying to kind of maybe match some of the things that have been built recently.
Well, if I was going to use the neighborhood next door, I mean, the most recent comp that just sold was $833,000.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have right now. Thank you.
Councilwoman Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One quick question. Did y'all's traffic analysis include capacity counts on Cornwallis? Can you tell us what the capacity is on Cornwallis right now and the current usage?
Correct. So maybe what you're asking, the AADT, the annual average daily traffic, is around 5,000 vehicles per day. But our capacity analysis for a 2-lane roadway where you have signals, the best way to analyze that is at those intersections, since it's not free flow traffic all the time. So what our analysis looked at were those 2 signalized intersections, obviously, and at 15501 in Cornwallis, and then the side entrance driveway, because the best way to analyze that, since it is interrupted flow, is to look at those intersections individually to analyze those, as opposed to a full 2-lane roadway capacity. But the current AADT is around 5,000, if that answers your original question.
Okay, thank you. And so what were the levels of service at those intersections, and what impact would your development have on them?
Okay. I'll look it up right here. Let's see. Okay, so at 15501 southbound ramps and West Cornwallis, the difference between the background conditions and the combined conditions was nothing. They were both operating at level of service C in the AM and a level of service B in the PM. At 15501 northbound ramps in West Cornwallis Road, in the AM, the intersection and the background condition and the intersection and the build condition were operating at an A level of service. And in the PM, or that was for AM, excuse me, in the PM, they're both operating in the background and the build condition is a B level of service. So very, very minimal impact, if anything noticeable.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you. I just wanted to flag that level of service. Is that from the traffic study that was done during spring break, or is this a different traffic study?
Nope, that was from the full traffic impact analysis that was conducted and approved by DOT.
And I just had another question. Is it the norm to do traffic analysis for school buses based on one school? Is it the norm to do elementary, middle, and high school? Is it the norm to do every possible district bus that could be used, considering 90 families or 90 units being used? Like, how do you decide?
Don't know if I understand your full question of.
You noted that there was only 4 school buses that would be in use. And so I was just trying to figure out how you figured the 4, as opposed to the 50 different schools.
That was actually a picture that we took from the Planning Commission presentation that was given by the community to us. So we actually spent a lot of time actually going back to the Planning Commission writing down people's concerns, grabbing screenshots, and then looking how we can understand where their concerns are and what some of the facts really are.
So how do you figure the number of schools?
The school buses, we did not give that number of 4. This property in and of itself, the majority of these units are either studios or 1-bedrooms. And we do not really see that big of an impact onto the schools because we kind of see these as individuals that are moving to the area that want to be close to Duke Hospital. A lot of the people that are in healthcare profession, my wife's in healthcare profession, and I do know that when you work long hours, being really close to the hospital is extremely important to them. And so we kind of see this property as an opportunity to expand those choices for individuals that are starting off their careers at Duke.
Thank you. I just had another question for staff. And it may be more reflective than not, but just trying to figure out do we currently have a policy around previously built subdivisions in the flood zone? Or a floodplain? Or a 100-year stormwater flooding area?
Good evening, Sarah Young with the Planning Department. Councilmember, if I'm understanding your question, you want to know what is it that we have to potentially address from a regulatory standpoint, some of these older neighborhoods that were built before stormwater controls or before some of our environmental regulations. Is that your question?
Exactly. You're so good at this.
Yeah, so there is not a mechanism to retroactively require that anything that's already been built have improvements made. However, I will say that at the time of site plan, which is when the detailed stormwater analysis for a new development happens, they do look at historic flooding in the area, and they will, if they believe that the impacts of the new development will make conditions worse, they will require additional stormwater controls for that new development, which is not normally required. So normally, stormwater standards require that you treat what is on your site and what will fall on your site, and generally keep it from going beyond your site. But in conditions like this, they often look at historical flooding, and they may require additional controls because of that.
And just because I know this site very well, I just wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit further in saying that it's one thing to address stormwater. When your sewer outflows are overflowing into folks' homes currently, I don't know that there's a measure of stormwater flow that we could create that would stop that. And so I do want to just note that I'm sorry that we lost Miss Lucy. I know that she's been battling, the sewage that was coming into her home for a long time, and I really want to say that if her daughter is listening, that if she wanted to reach out, I'm ready and available to try and figure out what we need to do to address it, as I thought that we had covered it, and it doesn't sound like we have. I'm a little concerned on what that means for new development, even if it is infill, but I do know that that strip, that long sewer outflow strip kind of created that issue for that one household, and I'm not sure whether it's expanded any further over the last couple of years with a lot of this, a lot more rain and a lot more flooding occurring in that area.
That's something that we can certainly circle back and try and connect folks if they'll make contact with us. If there's a sewer overflow issue, that's a little bit separate and a different issue that we can, the city does have resources to make sure that that is not happening.
And is there any grant or current funding resources that we're lining up for infrastructure that would address that current flooding that's been occurring in that community for as long as I can remember?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I'd have to defer to someone else.
Okay.
Any other questions from council? Councilman Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me get my notes here. So many of my questions were asked. I am going to ask that staff answer one more, repeat an answer for me. What is it currently zoned for again?
RS 20, residential 20, and commercial general.
Okay, gotcha. And you stated about a fast food drive-through or something like that?
Yes, give me 1 second. So the most intense use under the current RS 20 and commercial general zoning designation for transportation-related impacts would be 6 single-family units and a 5,000 square foot fast food restaurant with a drive-up window.
Okay. I also wanted to ask about the right now it's being proposed for 90 units. So if it is like, let's say 60 units, would it have any significant difference?
In regards to traffic?
Yeah, traffic, land preservation.
Sorry, I can take that again. Bill Judge, Transportation. Not particularly. We require a traffic impact analysis at 150 peak hour trips. These 90 units are only generating, probably about 40% of that. So it's well under our threshold. So even lower density would likely, with some of the existing spacing issues that the neighbors spoke of, you would still have that, whether you had 60 units or 45 units, we'd still have some of those same concerns, but the proposed 2 to 3 car storage for the left turn lane should be more than adequate for 90 units.
Okay, thank you. I think also one thing that's really standing out is the flooding component of the land. Did you all offer anything about a retention pond at all? Did you mention that or not?
I'm going to ask Tim to respond to that.
Okay.
Our proposal is that we will not be increasing the peak flow from the pre-development condition beyond the 100-year storm. In order to accomplish that, we will do a downstream and upstream flooding analysis, as well as provide a retention structure. Due to some topography on the site, a retention pond is probably not likely, but it would be some type of underground device to control the water flow from the site.
Underground water. Okay. My glasses on so I can see my notes here. All right, and regarding the entrance and where it is, you mentioned earlier about a right in, right out, but I didn't hear what you said after that. It was about a U-turn.
Okay, so through the coordination with NCDOT and the district office, what was kind of agreed to with DOT was to look at that turn lane that would extend from the proposed site driveway back to the interchange at Cornwallis and 15501. One thing that's our client has indicated with the district is if the district ever determined they wanted to make that driveway a right in, right out, that our client is agreeable to that. However, if that was to happen, someone who's wanting to turn left coming from 15501 or coming from the east, they would have to find somewhere to make a U-turn to come back out, to be able to turn, or make a U-turn to come back and turn right into the driveway. In order to do that, you'd have to have some sort of accommodation facility, something further to the west of the site driveway, whether that be a U-turn bulb out or what have you, which would require some sort of right-of-way acquisition to create that U-turn bulb out so that someone could, coming from the east, make their way into the site development. So as it's shown right now and as coordinated with DOT, a left turn would be allowed into the site. Now, coming out of the site, it would be a right only coming out, but you could turn left into it or right into it, but coming out of it, you'd have to only be able to turn right out of it to head to 15501. Does that help answer the question?
Got it. I just remember hearing it being mentioned. Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, colleagues. I was right. You always ask the questions that I had, but my final, I guess, this case for me reminds me of why this job was so much easier before I had it. Because the choice, what's operative for me is the choice is between, a lot of people think when the council says no to something, it's over. But all of our no's are a yes to something else, all of them. So for me, it comes down to, is it a better choice faced with a growing city, we're not a town, we are a city, a growing city. Is it better to have 6 single-story, family homes there, or a fast food restaurant, or 90 apartment units with 5 units at 60% AMI? And if anyone thinks that there's an easy answer to that, have at it. But the bottom line for me is which is the more desirable outcome? You know, there's no neighborhood or area in this city that has been exempted or is cloistered from the effects of growth. I used to be able to walk from my home to a golf course and hit golf balls. I can't anymore. That golf course is gone, and there are a bunch of houses there. There's more traffic. On my street, I have to wait longer till I turn out. And I'm on council. But there's no neighborhood. So I get it when folk talk about how their neighborhoods are changing, how they're being impacted by a growing city. I feel it personally. So I guess, colleagues, for me, what it comes down to, and I still don't know, and your comments and questions have been very helpful, is 90 units with a growing population better than 6 homes at possibly 800 grand apiece? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Capilla.
Yes, thank you. I meant to ask this earlier, so I apologize. We got an email from a resident. It was very thoughtful, and I appreciated it. And he did ask about prioritizing the inclusion of public access point to the future Sandy Creek Trail extension. And I just wasn't sure, that hadn't come up, but I did want to at least raise it so that I was, you know, being thoughtful about what this resident sent.
I believe you're asking about the buffer that we have that's going in between us and Canterbury.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. In our site plan that we've been working on, we actually had part of our original site plan for us to put in the first leg of that greenway. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a big advocate of e-bikes, and so I really hope that that greenway goes the full extension that it's planning on going. So we are committed and want that to happen.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, that's all I have.
Any other comments from the council? Thank you. We will now move to the 2 motions for our consideration this evening. Motion number 1 is to adopt an ordinance amendment. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Roper Planning. Staff just wanted to restate the proffers that the applicant noted earlier.
Thank you.
The first one being $100,000 to the Durham Dedicated Housing Fund and 5 units at 60% area median income. Staff also just wanted to note that there is a needed change to the development plan. The first text commitment lists 60 foot as the maximum building height. However, the graphic development plan shows 48 within the building envelope. Therefore, the maximum building height should be updated to 48 feet instead of 60 feet on the text commitment number 1.
I believe the building is slightly higher than 48. I believe it's 48 and a half feet. So I think I said 49.
Yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can we also confirm that those 5 units at 60% of AMI will be affordable for the 30-year affordability period? That's a question for y'all. Your 5 affordable units at 60% of AMI, will those be affordable for 30 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilman
When,
Williams.
do you have an idea when you would, if this is passed, when you would start?
Yes, so I've already started on my architectural drawings, and we have a site plan that we have been working on. So after this hopefully is approved, we will move towards working on trying to get our site plan approved, get our construction drawings done, and then hopefully break ground once we've gone through the whole process of architectural design and full engineering.
And pardon me for asking questions that you may have already answered. The rest of the land, the wetlands, is there anything that you plan to do back there? I can't remember you answered that.
Originally, I had thought that it'd be a cool spot to have a disc golf course, walking trails. I mean, something that you can do through something that is in a flood zone, something that, people can be active in. But I mean, that's not anything that we've kind of basically put everything on pause until tonight.
All right. I guess I'll be making a decision in the next few seconds. I still don't know, but I could appreciate the additions that have been made since you met with the Planning Commission. I'll ponder. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Caballero.
Thank you.
Last one.
Thank
Last
you.
one.
I did want to say I did meet with residents, I think either last week or the week before, in this, I think from several different neighborhoods. It was a small group, and I appreciated the time. Just want to share where my mind is so you all know. So full disclosure, I didn't know how I was going to vote. I understood community concerns, resonated with me. I wanted to make sure. That's why, especially when there's cases that I would consider, for lack of a better word, controversial, I try and really drive it. I did not do any light trespassing on the sign. Sometimes I do that. Today I did not. But I did, when I met with the neighbors, drive behind Colony up Pickett to get that sense of it, and then drove where the actual site is today, and drove through many of the neighborhoods from many of the residents who are here this evening. My kid goes to orthodontist there, so I know the area fairly well. When I drove it, which was around 5:30, I try and go when it's going to be high traffic so that I can see. Legitimately, there was not a lot of traffic. I thought, maybe, I know DPS was on spring break last week, maybe there's still some kids. I will be voting yes. And I think part of the reason it's to the Mayor Pro Tem's point, and one of the reasons I asked, I always want folks, and I was very clear with residents last week, what is it that you're going to get if we say no? It's already in the city limits. Sometimes when it's an annexation, folks don't have the capacity to do, water and sewer. That's expensive. This is an infill development. And so left with that choice, it is really, I can do 6 probably very expensive homes and a fast food restaurant, which does not allay your concerns around traffic. Or I can say yes to 90 units at rent that I understand is extremely pricey, but I think a lot of homes in that area are also very, very expensive. That is some pretty prime real estate in Durham, and it always has been. It's close to Duke, it's connected, large lots in some of those older neighborhoods, gorgeous mid-century homes. And that doesn't actually get us to a place where I feel we're winning as a community. We desperately need housing. I know that this developer isn't from Durham, but he is from a community right next door. This isn't an out-of-state developer. I know lots of us have lots of feelings about that, but I do want to just share my rationale, my thoughts. It's not that you weren't heard, it's because within the context of how I can make my choices, I do think that this is a better decision. Thank you.
All right, we have 2 motions for our consideration this evening involving this matter. Motion number 1 is to adopt an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance by taking property out of the residential suburban -20, RS-20, and commercial general CG and establishing the same as planned development residential 13.024, PDR 13.024.
Moved as read.
Second.
Been moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilwoman Johnson. Madam Clerk, if you would open the vote. If you would close the vote and report out.
The motion passes 4-3 with with Mayor O'Neill and Councilmember Freeman and Hyman voting no.
Our second motion for consideration is motion number 2. Sorry, that is the second, number 2. To adopt the consistency statement as required by NCGS 160D-605.
Move to adopt consistency.
Second.
Been moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilwoman Johnson. Madam Clerk, if you would open the vote. If you will close the vote and report out.
The motion passes 6-1 with Councilmember Halsey Hyman voting no.
All right, thank you all. That is our agenda for tonight. Our last agenda item is other matters. Is there anything to, please, we're still in session, everybody. Is there anything that will claim our attention tonight as a council? All right. Well, it has been a great evening. We thank you all for joining us by way of TV, and we thank you all for joining us in person tonight. It is, once again, adjourned. Meeting is adjourned at 10:37. 10:37 on, what's today's date, everybody? April 3rd, 2023. Bull City strong. Peace is a lifestyle.